Mental models for financial success. Create financial freedom by critical thinking secrets. Introduction. Your brain is like a toolbox, not the sleek, organized kind, but that chaotic junk drawer stuffed with random Allen wrenches from old IKEA builds, and that one weird tool you bought for a project 5 years ago and never used again. When it comes to making financial decisions, most of us work with a pretty messy toolbox. We've picked up various tools along the way. Some from our parents. Thanks for teaching me to always buy on sale, Mom. Some from that one economics class in college. Supply and demand. Curves. And some from that time we panic sold during a market crash and immediately regretted it. Precious experience. However, making smart financial decisions requires more than having the right tools. It demands the right mental models. What are mental models? Mental models are frameworks for thinking that help us understand how things work in the real world. They function like X-ray glasses from old comic books, except instead of seeing through walls, they help us see through complexity. Warren Buffett uses mental models to analyze investments. Ray Dalio uses them to understand economic machines. And that neighbor who somehow always makes the right financial moves? They probably use mental models too, even if they don't call them that. Mental models serve as your brain's operating system. Just like your smartphone needs an operating system to run apps efficiently, your brain needs mental models to process financial decisions effectively. Without them, you're essentially trying to navigate a complex financial world with a flip phone from 2005. Why mental models matter for financial success? How many times have you looked at your bank account and felt that knot in your stomach? Or watched others seemingly effortlessly build wealth while you feel stuck in financial quicksand? We've all experienced these moments. Financial success transcends knowing the difference between stocks and bonds or understanding what a P/E ratio means. The real game changer lies in how you think about money, risk, opportunity, and value. Mental models give you this superpower. They help you see patterns where others see chaos. Make decisions with confidence instead of fear. Understand complex financial situations without getting overwhelmed. Build wealth systematically instead of hoping for luck. The most successful investors and financial minds don't just have more information. They have better thinking tools. They use mental models like compound interest to understand their investments and make better decisions in all areas of their financial lives. How? This book will transform your thinking. This book goes beyond simply presenting a collection of mental models. Instead, it'll rebuild your financial operating system from the ground up. Give you practical tools that you can start using immediately. Help you understand not just what to think, but how to think about money. Show you how to combine different mental models to make better decisions. Think of this book as your personal trainer for financial thinking. We'll work out your mental muscles, challenge your assumptions, and build new neural pathways that will transform how you think about money. By the time you finish this book, you'll have a new set of mental tools that will help you. Spot financial opportunities others miss. Avoid common money pitfalls. Make decisions with more confidence and less stress. Build lasting wealth instead of chasing quick wins. The goal extends beyond turning you into a Warren Buffett clone, though that wouldn't hurt your bank account. It centers on helping you develop your own sophisticated financial thinking tools so you can make better decisions for your unique situation. Ready to upgrade your brain's financial operating system? Let's dive in and start building your new mental model toolbox, one that would make that perfectly organized Pinterest toolbox jealous. Part 1. The Foundation of Financial Thinking. Chapter 1. The Power of Compounding. In 1626, Dutch settlers purchased Manhattan Island for goods valued at about 60 guilders, roughly $1,000 today. Consider this choice. Would you rather have the current value of all Manhattan real estate, approximately $1.74 trillion, or a penny doubled every day for 30 days? Most people choose Manhattan without hesitation. Yet, that doubling penny would be worth over $5.3 million by day 30. This mind-bending power of exponential growth has captivated humans throughout history. Consider the legend of the inventor of chess, who requested 1 grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, and so on. The emperor laughed at such a modest request until his mathematicians calculated the final amount. Over 18 quintillion grains of rice, more than the total supply on Earth. Understanding exponential growth. Your brain naturally thinks in linear terms. When someone says growth, you probably imagine a straight line moving upward at a steady pace. This linear thinking served our ancestors well. Most growth patterns they encountered in nature followed predictable linear paths. A tree grows about the same amount each year. Walking speed stays constant, and the sun rises and sets at regular intervals. But nature also harbors explosive exponential patterns. A single bacteria cell divides into 2, then 4, and then 8, reaching millions within days. Our brains evolved fantastic pattern recognition capabilities for linear growth because that's what helped us survive. But exponential growth, our mental hardware kind of struggles with it. Exponential growth follows a different pattern entirely. Instead of adding the same amount each time, you multiply. Take our penny example. On day 1, you have 1 cent. Day 2 brings you to 2 cents, and by day 5, you've reached 16 cents. This early stage feels so slow that most people give up before the magic happens. By day 15, that penny grows to $163.84. By day 20, $5,242.88. Day 25, $167,772.16. The final tally on day 30, a staggering $5,368,709.12. This pattern appears everywhere in finance. Investment returns, market trends, inflation, professional networks, and even our understanding of finance itself, as each new concept makes learning additional concepts easier. We consistently underestimate the power of compounding because the early stages appear deceptively slow. The later stages seem impossibly fast. The middle period tests our patience. The final results often defy our intuition. The 8th wonder of the world, compound interest. Albert Einstein allegedly called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world, adding that those who understand it earn it, those who don't pay it. Einstein, as cited in Calipris, 2011. Benjamin Franklin left 1,000 pounds sterling each to Boston and Philadelphia in his will, with one catch: the money had to be invested for 200 years. By 1990, when the trusts were finally dissolved, their combined value had grown to over $6.5 million. Franklin, 1790/2008. When you earn simple interest, you make money on your initial investment. When you earn compound interest, you make money on your money's money. This seemingly subtle difference creates extraordinary long-term results. Consider Alex and Sam, both college graduates at age 22. Alex immediately starts investing $200 monthly at 8% annually. Sam waits 10 years, then invests $400 monthly at the same rate. By age 65, Alex has invested $103,200 over 43 years, while Sam has invested $158,400 over 33 years. Despite investing $55,200 less, Alex ends up with nearly twice as much money, $1,064,287 versus Sam's $583,640. Add a third character, Taylor, who starts at 22 like Alex but earns a 10% return instead of 8%. Same $200 monthly investment, just 2 percentage points different. By age 65, Taylor accumulates $1,897,493, an extra $833,206 in wealth from that seemingly small difference. Now, factor in inflation, historically averaging around 3% annually. Every dollar you don't invest loses purchasing power at a compound rate. $100,000 today will have the buying power of just $40,101 in 30 years at 3% inflation. This reveals three universal laws of compound interest. Time beats timing. The length of time you stay invested matters more than picking the perfect moment to invest. Warren Buffett created over 90% of his wealth after age 65 thanks to decades of compounding. Rate changes everything. Small differences in interest rates create massive differences in final results. A 1% increase in your average return rate could mean retiring years earlier or with hundreds of thousands more in savings. Frequency amplifies results. Monthly compounding beats annual compounding, and daily beats monthly. This applies to everything from investment returns to learning new skills. Compound interest also works in reverse, which explains why credit card debt can feel like quicksand. An 18% APR credit card balance doesn't just cost you 18% annually, it compounds that interest monthly, turning manageable debt into a financial black hole. The rule of 72 helps us understand this power. To estimate how long it takes money to double at a given interest rate, divide 72 by the interest rate. At 8% interest, your money doubles every 9 years. Leveraging compounding. Across multiple domains. The real magic of compound growth extends far beyond your bank account. Smart investors apply this mental model across three key domains. Financial investments. Tax-advantaged accounts supercharge the compounding effect. Consider Sarah, who invests $6,000 annually in a Roth IRA earning 8%. In a taxable account at a 24% tax rate, she'd have $932,914 after 30 years. By using a Roth IRA to eliminate taxes on gains, her money grows to $1,223,459, a $290,545 difference solely from preventing taxes from interrupting the compound growth cycle. Employer matching in 401ks provides another accelerator. On a $60,000 salary, contributing $3,600 annually with a 50% match and 8% market returns creates $1,007,643 after 30 years. Without the match, just $671,762. John Bogle, founder of Vanguard, built an investment empire on a simple insight. Minimizing fees maximizes compounding. A seemingly small 1% annual fee reduces a portfolio's value by 26% over 30 years. Bogle, 2007. Saving strategies. Every dollar of recurring expenses costs much more over time. A $100 monthly subscription means $1,200 annually. Invested at 8% over 30 years, that annual savings grows up to $135,940. Pete Dini, Mr. Money Mustache, retired at 30 by maximizing his savings rate. He understood that cutting expenses had a double benefit. Each dollar saved could be invested, and a lower cost of living meant he needed less money to maintain his lifestyle indefinitely. Aidney, 2012. Knowledge acquisition. Knowledge compounds exponentially when you build mental frameworks. Each new mental model makes it easier to understand and apply future concepts. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, credits his success to collecting and connecting mental models from various disciplines. Knowledge compounds fastest when you connect ideas across fields. Munger, 1994. The Symphony of Compounding. A tiny snowflake lands on a mountainside. As it rolls downhill, it picks up more snow. Each rotation adds not just to its size, but to its ability to gather even more snow. By the time it reaches the bottom, that insignificant snowflake has become an avalanche, transforming the landscape in its path. Your wealth-building journey follows the same pattern. The early stages often feel frustratingly slow, like our doubling penny that takes 5 days to reach 16 cents. This is where most people quit. They see the tiny snowball but can't visualize the avalanche it might become. The middle stage tests your patience. The snowball is bigger now, but the bottom of the hill still looks far away. This is when understanding the mathematics of compound growth becomes crucial. The final stage often arrives suddenly, catching even prepared investors by surprise. This is when all three forms of compounding, financial, savings, and knowledge, combine to create truly extraordinary results. The best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is today. The power of compounding awaits. The snowball is in your hands as the hill stretches before you. Time to start rolling. Chapter 2. Opportunity Cost, the price of every choice you make. Having explored compounding in Chapter 1, we now turn to another foundational mental model that shapes every financial decision. While compounding shows how money grows over time, opportunity cost reveals what we give up with each choice. Imagine standing at a financial crossroads. To your left is a new car with that intoxicating new car smell. To your right is an investment account. Choose the car, and you forfeit what that money could have grown into. Choose the investment, and you give up the immediate pleasure of driving a new vehicle. Every financial decision comes with an invisible price tag, the opportunity cost, the unseen cost of every decision. In 1848, French economist Frédéric Bastiat introduced a concept that would revolutionize economic thinking. In the economic sphere, an act produces not only one effect, but a series of effects. The first alone is immediate, it is seen. The others emerge only subsequently. They are not seen. Bastiat, 1848-1995. This insight forms the foundation of opportunity cost, the value of the next best alternative you give up when making a choice. It's the road not taken, the option declined, the possibility unrealized. Most people consider only direct costs, the price tag, the monthly payment, and the fee. But financial mastery requires looking beyond these visible costs to the invisible ones, opportunities foregone. Consider Jane, who receives a $5,000 bonus. She has three options: pay down credit card debt with a 20% interest rate, invest in an index fund with an expected 8% annual return, take a dream vacation to Bali. Many people calculate the Bali trip's cost as simply $5,000, but the true cost includes what Jane could have done instead. If she chooses vacation over debt repayment, the opportunity cost includes the 20% interest she'll continue paying. Over 5 years, an additional $6,192 in interest payments. If she chooses vacation over investing, the opportunity cost includes the potential growth. At 8% annual return over 30 years, that $5,000 would grow to $50,313. The real cost of that Bali trip isn't just $5,000. It's $50,313 of future wealth. This isn't to say Jane shouldn't go to Bali. The point is that she should decide with full awareness of what she's giving up, not just what she's getting. Opportunity costs exist in multiple dimensions. Money. What else could this money do for me? Time. How else could I spend these hours? Energy. Where else could I direct my limited resources? Attention. What else could I focus on instead? Even billionaires can't escape opportunity cost. Warren Buffett may afford anything, but he can't do everything. His famous frugality isn't about affordability. It's about recognizing opportunity costs and making deliberate choices, trade-offs in spending, investing, and time management. Spending trade-offs. Every purchase represents a trade-off between present enjoyment and future possibilities, creating tension between consumption today and wealth tomorrow. Consider buying versus renting a home. When you buy a $300,000 home with a 20% down payment, you commit $60,000 that could have been invested elsewhere. If investments would have returned 8% annually while your home appreciates at 3%, the opportunity cost equals 5% of potential growth per year. However, renting means forfeiting potential home equity and tax advantages. The right choice depends on local market conditions, how long you'll stay, interest rates, and personal values. Smart financial thinkers don't ask, can I afford this purchase? But what am I giving up to make this purchase, and is it worth it? This shifts spending from permission, can I, to prioritization, should I? Investment trade-offs. Investment decisions fundamentally involve allocating limited resources among competing opportunities. When you invest in stocks, you forfeit the security of bonds. When you choose bonds, you give up growth potential. When you keep money in cash, you trade growth for liquidity and safety. Asset allocation represents a series of opportunity cost decisions. A common allocation for young investors might be 80% stocks and 20% bonds, accepting the opportunity cost of potentially higher stock returns for stability and reduced volatility. The most sophisticated investors don't try to eliminate these trade-offs. They embrace them with clear eyes, understanding that different allocations represent different sets of opportunity costs to be weighed against goals and risk tolerance. Time management trade-offs. Perhaps the most profound application involves our scarcest resource, time. Unlike money, time cannot be saved, invested, or recovered once spent. When you spend an hour watching television, the opportunity cost includes what else you could have accomplished. Reading a financial book, researching investments, developing a marketable skill, or building business relationships. Brian worked 80-hour weeks as an investment banker, earning $300,000 annually. The visible benefit was clear: high income. However, the opportunity costs included deteriorating health, strained marriage, and inability to pursue other interests. When he calculated these costs explicitly, Brian negotiated a position with 50-hour weeks at $200,000. His hourly rate increased and opportunity costs decreased dramatically. Sometimes the financially optimal choice isn't optimal when time is properly valued. Driving across town to save $10 on groceries might make mathematical sense if you value your time at $0 per hour. But if your time is worth $50 per hour, the opportunity cost of a 30-minute round trip equals $25. More than the savings. Applying opportunity cost thinking in daily life. The opportunity cost mindset. The first step is developing a habit of pausing before decisions and asking, what am I giving up by making this choice? Michael contemplated a $35,000 luxury SUV upgrade from his functional 5-year-old sedan. Instead of focusing solely on monthly payments, he asked what else that money could do. He calculated that investing it could grow to approximately $75,000 in 10 years at a 7% return. He chose to keep his current car for 3 more years and set up an automatic investment for the amount he would have spent on payments. This single decision potentially changed his net worth by over $75,000. Start by applying this thinking to one spending category for a week. Before each purchase, take 30 seconds to consider what else you could do with that money. You don't need to change every decision, just become aware of the trade-offs. The per-hour method. Calculate your effective hourly rate, what an hour of your time is worth. For salaried employees, divide your annual after-tax income by the number of hours worked. Then convert purchases into hours of your life. A $120 dinner costs 4 hours of work. A $900 vacation costs 30 hours. A $24,000 car costs 800 hours, about 20 weeks of full-time work. Sophia applied this to her shopping habits and discovered she was trading 8 hours of work monthly for clothing she rarely wore. She reduced her clothing budget by half and invested the difference, effectively buying back 4 hours of her life each month while building wealth. The future value perspective. Calculate the future value of current expenses using compounding concepts. Create a simple reference showing what different regular expenses would be worth if invested instead. $4 daily coffee, $120 per month, equals $59,496 over 20 years at 7%. $15 daily lunch, $300 per month, equals $148,741. $40 weekly dinner out, $160 per month, equals $79,329. $100 monthly impulse purchase, $49,580. This isn't meant to make you feel guilty about every purchase, but to help make trade-offs consciously. Many people naturally reduce spending on things providing little lasting satisfaction while maintaining spending on what truly matters. The regret minimization framework. Jeff Bezos famously used this when deciding to leave his Wall Street job to start Amazon. He projected himself into the future at age 80 and asked which decision he would regret more: trying and failing at building an internet business, or never trying at all. Bezos, as cited in Stone, 2013. Apply this framework by asking, in 10 years, will I regret spending this money, or will I regret not having the experience? At retirement, will I be happy I invested consistently, or will I wish I had enjoyed more luxuries? When looking back, will I value security or wish I had taken more risks? The mindful choice. Opportunity cost thinking doesn't demand always choosing the financially optimal path. Rather, it insists that you make choices with awareness of what you're giving up. Sometimes you'll choose the luxury vacation over the investment account because experiences provide value beyond money. Other times, you'll decline immediate pleasure for future financial freedom. The power lies not in specific choices, but in making them consciously rather than by default. The wealthiest people in both financial and life terms aren't those who blindly maximize every dollar or obsessively squeeze opportunity cost out of every decision. They're those who thoughtfully align resources with values, making trade-offs deliberately rather than accidentally. The path to financial freedom isn't about making perfect decisions, it's about making conscious ones. Chapter 3. Inversion Thinking. Carl Jacobi, a 19th century German mathematician, had a simple yet profound problem-solving maxim: invert, always invert. When faced with difficult problems, working backward often reveals solutions that remain hidden when approached conventionally. Jacobi, as cited in Polya, 1945/2004. Charlie Munger brought this concept into investing. It is remarkable how much long-term advantage people like us have gotten by trying to be consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent. Munger, 2005. This is the essence of inversion thinking in finance. Focusing first on avoiding catastrophic mistakes rather than chasing brilliant insights. While financial culture celebrates unicorn startups and perfectly timed market entries, success more often comes from what you don't do than what you do. Avoid stupidity versus seeking brilliance. Consider two investment approaches. The first investor constantly seeks the next big thing, jumping between hot stocks, employing sophisticated trading strategies, and trying to time markets. They might occasionally hit remarkable winners, but they'll likely accumulate numerous losses, pay significant transaction costs, and eventually underperform the market. The second investor focuses primarily on avoiding major mistakes. They stay away from investments they don't understand, maintain adequate emergency savings, diversify appropriately, keep costs low, and resist market timing. They'll never have the exciting 10,000% winner, but consistently build wealth with significantly less stress. Research shows the second investor typically outperforms in the long run. A Dalbar study found that while the S&P 500 returned approximately 10% annually from 1990 to 2020, the average equity mutual fund investor earned just 5.96%, primarily due to behavioral mistakes like chasing performance and panic selling. Dalbar, Inc., 2021. Inversion thinking operates from a fundamentally different starting point. Instead of, how can I get rich, it asks, how can I avoid going broke? Instead of, how can I maximize returns, it asks, how can I minimize catastrophic risks? Instead of, what stocks should I buy, it asks, what investments should I absolutely avoid? This approach aligns with evolutionary biology. Avoiding extinction matters more than maximizing advantages. A gazelle doesn't need to be the fastest in the herd, it just needs to be faster than last place. The power becomes clear when we consider compounding. A 50% investment loss requires a subsequent 100% gain just to break even. Avoiding that 50% loss keeps you on the compounding path rather than requiring heroic performance just to recover. Warren Buffett distilled this wisdom into two famous rules. Rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. Buffett, as cited in Schroeder, 2008. How to prevent financial disasters. Inversion thinking becomes particularly powerful when applied systematically to identify and prevent potential financial disasters before they occur. Preventing investment disasters. Start by imagining your investment portfolio has failed catastrophically 5 years from now. Working backward, what were the most likely causes? Common investment disasters include concentration risk, having too much money in a single investment, company, or sector. The inversion solution isn't seeking perfect diversification, but ensuring no single failure can devastate your finances. Leverage disaster. Borrowing magnifies both gains and losses. The inversion approach doesn't ask, how much leverage can I handle? But what level of leverage would I be comfortable with during the worst market conditions of my lifetime? Liquidity crunch. Being forced to sell investments at depressed prices due to unexpected cash needs. Rather than maximizing every dollar's return, ensure sufficient liquidity to weather emergencies without disrupting long-term investments. Behavioral collapse. Abandoning your investment strategy at precisely the wrong time due to fear or greed. Instead of asking how to perfectly time markets, ask how to create a strategy you'll actually stick with through market extremes. Preventing career and income disasters. Your career typically represents your largest financial asset. Applying inversion thinking here means identifying and preventing potential career catastrophes. Common career disasters include skill obsolescence. Regularly ask, which of my skills are most vulnerable to obsolescence and how can I develop resilient capabilities? Industry collapse. Periodically ask, if my industry faced severe disruption, what transferable skills would protect my earning power? Network decay. Consider, how can I maintain relationships that would provide? Health breakdown. Ask, how can I structure my work to be sustainable through health challenges? Elena, a print journalist, observed digital disruption in the early 2000s and asked, if my newspaper closed in 5 years, what skills would I need? She developed digital content expertise alongside traditional skills and built relationships beyond her workplace. When her newspaper downsized in 2008, she already had multiple options while many colleagues struggled, preventing debt and cash flow disasters. Common cash flow disasters include debt overload. Instead of asking, how much can I borrow? Ask, how would these payments look during a financial crisis? Income volatility. Ask, how would my finances perform if my income dropped by 50% for 6 months? Expense shocks. Ask, what catastrophic expenses am I not currently prepared for? Illiquid asset trap. Ask, how quickly could I access funds in an emergency without selling assets at distressed prices? Lessons from Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger employs inversion thinking in multiple dimensions. Avoiding too hard. Problems. Munger keeps a too hard pile on his desk. If an investment involves excessive complexity or factors beyond his understanding, he simply moves on. The mental checklist approach. Rather than focusing on reasons to invest, Munger runs potential opportunities through a checklist of reasons not to invest. An idea must survive this gauntlet of potentially fatal flaws before receiving serious consideration, focusing on avoiding psychological mistakes. Munger designs decision processes specifically to counteract known psychological weaknesses. As he puts it, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. To apply Munger's wisdom to personal finance. Create your own too hard pile. Give yourself permission to avoid financial products, strategies, or decisions you don't fully understand, regardless of their apparent popularity. Develop a financial pre-mortem habit. Before major decisions, imagine the decision has failed miserably, then work backward to identify what went wrong. Focus on avoiding financial ruin rather than maximizing every opportunity. Consistently avoiding financial disaster matters more than capturing every potential gain. The Inversion framework for financial decisions. Define the opposite of success. First, clearly define what failure looks like. Identify pathways to failure. Brainstorm the specific ways this negative outcome could occur. Create prevention strategies. For each pathway to failure, develop specific strategies to eliminate or mitigate the risk. Consider remaining upside. Consider the potential upside only after addressing downside risks. Make the inverted decision. The final decision integrates both failure prevention and upside potential, but gives precedence to disaster avoidance. The most successful investors understand a paradoxical truth. The surest path to wealth often involves focusing first on not becoming poor. By preventing disasters that would set you back years or decades, inversion thinking creates the stability needed for compound growth to work its magic over time. Remember Munger's wisdom: invert, always invert. Chapter 4. The Margin of Safety. Benjamin Graham, father of value investing, introduced a concept that would become one of the most powerful mental models in finance: the margin of safety. While he defined it as the difference between the intrinsic value of a stock and its market price, this principle extends far beyond investing. Graham, 1949-2006. At its core, the margin of safety is about building buffers against uncertainty, creating space for errors, miscalculations, and inevitable surprises that life delivers, building financial resilience. Engineers design bridges to withstand far more weight than their stated capacity. This isn't excessive caution, but prudent preparation for unknowable stresses the structure might face over decades. Your financial life requires the same engineering principle. The margin of safety operates across multiple dimensions: income resilience, creating multiple income streams; spending resilience, living well below your means; debt resilience, maintaining lower debt levels than guidelines recommend; investment resilience, requiring discounts to intrinsic value when purchasing assets; liquidity resilience, keeping adequate cash reserves; knowledge resilience, understanding both what you know and what you don't. Each dimension reinforces the others, creating a financial structure that can bend without breaking when faced with challenges. Consider Sarah, a freelance designer who maintained 6 months of expenses in emergency funds, developed multiple client relationships, lived on 70% of her income, and invested conservatively. When a major client canceled a contract representing 40% of her income, these overlapping safety margins prevented a crisis. Her emergency fund provided immediate protection. Modest living expenses reduced pressure to replace income quickly. Diverse client relationships maintained baseline work, and conservative investments didn't require liquidation at inopportune times. Beyond financial protection, building resilience through safety margins creates peace of mind, the confidence to pursue opportunities, take calculated risks, and make decisions from a position of security rather than fear, creating buffers in investing and personal finance. Investment buffers. Value-based purchasing by assets only at a significant discount to their intrinsic value, acknowledging inherent uncertainty in valuation. Warren Buffett exemplifies this principle, patiently waiting for prices that provide a substantial margin of safety. Diversification as a safety margin. Ensure no single investment failure can significantly damage your overall position. Lisa limited individual stock positions to 2% of her portfolio. When one plummeted 70%, her overall portfolio declined by less than 1.5%. A manageable setback rather than a devastating blow. Time horizon extensions. Plan to reach financial goals earlier than needed. Robert structured his children's college savings to reach targets 2 years early, protecting against potential market downturns near withdrawal dates. Conservative return assumptions. Use below historical average return projections in financial planning. Jennifer and David based retirement savings on an assumed 6% return rather than the historical 10%. During prolonged market slumps, their planning remained on track while friends using optimistic projections faced difficult adjustments. Investment quality buffers companies with strong balance sheets, competitive advantages, and capable management provide greater resilience against economic challenges. Personal finance buffers. Income buffers. Create redundancy in income streams. Thomas, a software engineer, developed secondary income through technical writing and online courses. When his employer implemented layoffs, this alternate income covered 40% of his expenses, allowing him to search thoroughly for the right next opportunity. Spending buffers live significantly below your means. While financial advisors often suggest saving 10 to 15% of income, the margin of safety perspective suggests living on 70 to 80% of your after-tax income. Maria and Carlos structured their lifestyle around 75% of their combined income, creating flexibility that allowed Carlos to pursue a career change requiring graduate school without financial stress. Debt buffers. Maintain lower debt levels than conventional guidelines recommend. Kevin chose a 15-year mortgage at 20% of his income, rather than the 30-year option allowing a more expensive property. When interest rates rose substantially, his conservative approach protected him from financial stress experienced by neighbors with larger mortgages. Insurance buffers. Protect against catastrophic expenses. Beyond basic coverage, consider disability insurance, protecting 60 to 70% of income. Term life insurance, covering 10 to 12 times annual expenses if you have dependents. Umbrella liability coverage, and long-term care insurance. Career buffers. Focus on continuous skill development, network building, and industry awareness. William invested 5 hours weekly developing adjacent skills and maintaining relationships across multiple companies. When his position became redundant after a merger, his broader skill set and active network helped secure a better-paying role. Emergency funds and conservative planning. The emergency fund, your first line of defense. Conventional wisdom recommends 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. The margin of safety suggests 6 to 12 months of total expenses for single-income households, variable earners, specialized careers, 3 to 6 months of total expenses for dual-income households in stable industries. Additional reserves for anticipated large expenses. Keep these funds in accessible, low-risk accounts, separate from retirement accounts or everyday spending. Conservative planning human psychology exhibits persistent optimism bias. Counter this through income conservation. Base projections on current or average income rather than peak earnings. Expense recognition. Track actual spending, then add 15 to 20% for unrecorded and irregular costs. Investment conservatism. Use below-average return assumptions and model periods of negative returns. Longevity planning. Extend life expectancy projections 5 to 10 years beyond actuarial averages. The freedom of constraints. At first glance, the margin of safety might seem restrictive, limiting leverage, reducing consumption, and increasing savings requirements. But this perspective misses the profound freedom that safety margins create. Just as riverbanks don't constrain water but enable its flow, appropriate financial buffers don't constrain your life but channel it more effectively toward genuine goals. By accepting certain constraints, living below your means, maintaining emergency reserves, assuming conservative returns, you create expansive freedom in other dimensions. Freedom from financial fear. Freedom to make decisions based on values rather than necessity. Freedom to pursue meaningful opportunities without desperate concern for immediate outcomes. Consider financial independence, the ultimate safety margin. By building substantial buffers throughout your financial life, you eventually reach a point where work becomes optional rather than mandatory. Building appropriate safety margins isn't about fearful preparation for disaster. It's about creating structural resilience that allows you to pursue opportunity, meaning, and purpose from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. The bridge engineer doesn't incorporate safety margins because they expect catastrophe, but because they want to ensure the structure fulfills its purpose under any conditions. Your financial life deserves the same thoughtful preparation, not out of fear, but out of respect for the goals, values, and aspirations your financial decisions ultimately serve. Part 2. Smart Investment and Wealth Building Mental Models. Chapter 5. The Circle of Competence. Warren Buffett, 1996, articulated a concept fundamental to intelligent investing. The size of that circle is not very important. Knowing its boundaries, however, is vital. He was describing the circle of competence, the area where you have genuine expertise and understanding. This mental model rests on a deceptively simple insight. The most dangerous knowledge isn't what you don't know, but what you think you know that isn't so. Knowing what you know and what you don't. The circle of competence isn't primarily about intelligence or education. Many brilliant people have destroyed wealth by venturing outside their areas of genuine understanding. Rather, it's about accurately mapping where your knowledge provides a meaningful edge and recognizing where it doesn't. Consider long-term capital management, LTCM. Founded by brilliant minds including 2 Nobel Prize-winning economists, this hedge fund assembled perhaps the most intellectually impressive investment team in history. Yet in 1998, LTCM collapsed spectacularly, requiring a $3.6 billion bailout. Lowenstein, 2000. Despite their extraordinary intelligence, LTCM's principals ventured beyond their circle of competence. Their models failed to account for unprecedented situations, underestimated liquidity risk, and mistook mathematical sophistication for a genuine understanding of complex market dynamics. The circle of competence has 3 critical components. First, core knowledge. At the center lies your genuine expertise, areas where you possess deep factual knowledge built through experience and study, conceptual understanding of underlying principles, pattern recognition developed through repeated observation, awareness of limitations and exceptions to general rules. Second, boundary awareness. Perhaps more important is awareness of your boundaries, knowing precisely where genuine understanding ends and speculation begins. This boundary awareness requires intellectual honesty and willingness to say, I don't know. Third, knowledge quality assessment. Not all knowledge within your circle carries equal reliability. Some understandings are rock solid, backed by consistent evidence and personal experience. Others remain probabilistic or represent working hypotheses that might require revision. Michael, a software engineer with 20 years of experience, exemplifies this approach. His tech expertise gives him legitimate insight when evaluating companies' competitive positions and product strategies. However, he carefully distinguishes between aspects where his knowledge provides value and those where it doesn't. He understands product development cycles but recognizes his limitations in precisely valuing businesses or predicting market movements. This self-awareness enhances his effectiveness by directing efforts where his knowledge creates genuine value while protecting him from overreaching. Why the best investors stay in their lane. The world's most successful investors consistently demonstrate the power of respecting their circles of competence. Warren Buffett, the discipline of saying no. Buffett's success stems as much from what he doesn't do as what he does. During the 1990s internet bubble, he avoided technology companies when he couldn't understand their competitive advantages, despite facing intense criticism as tech stocks soared. This discipline proved prescient when the bubble burst, devastating many high-flying companies while Berkshire Hathaway preserved capital. By staying within his circle of competence, Buffett avoided speculative losses that damaged many brilliant investors who ventured beyond their understanding. Importantly, Buffett's approach never precluded evolution. In recent years, Berkshire has invested substantially in Apple. This didn't represent abandoning principles, but expanding his circle to include consumer technology businesses whose economic characteristics he could genuinely understand. Peter Lynch. Invest in what you know. Lynch leveraged unique knowledge from professional experience and personal observation. His approach didn't suggest uninformed speculation, but starting research where you possess legitimate expertise or observational advantage. Lynch, 1989. A healthcare professional might notice a medical device gaining popularity before Wall Street analysts recognize its potential. Lynch's successful investments often began with personal observations, products gaining popularity in stores or businesses with excellent customer service. These didn't replace thorough research but provided starting points, where his attention might yield insights others missed. Charlie Munger, The Dangers of Physics Envy. Munger warns against the desire to make investing appear more precise and scientific than it truly is. Munger, 2003. This desire for false precision often leads intelligent people to apply sophisticated mathematical models beyond boundaries, where they reliably represent reality. Munger emphasizes recognizing fundamental differences between knowledge domains. Physics deals with consistent natural laws that can be precisely measured. Investing involves human psychology, institutional behaviors, and complex adaptive systems that resist simple mathematical representation. This explains why brilliant mathematicians often struggle with investing despite their intelligence. Their expertise in domains with precise rules doesn't necessarily transfer to domains governed by human behavior and complex feedback loops. How to expand your financial knowledge. While respecting your circle of competence protects against mistakes, deliberately expanding it creates new opportunities. The key lies in growing knowledge systematically, building genuine understanding rather than collecting superficial information. Map your current circle. Before expanding, accurately map your current competence. Ask, what specialized knowledge has your career provided? What formal training gives you a deeper understanding of specific aspects? What areas have you personally engaged with long enough to develop practical wisdom? Most importantly, where has your understanding been verified through successful decisions? Expand concentrically. The most effective expansion occurs through what Munger calls lattice-work thinking, connecting new knowledge to existing understanding rather than making disconnected conceptual leaps. Expand your circle concentrically, moving gradually outward from established expertise to adjacent domains where existing knowledge provides context for new learning. Each new area should connect to existing expertise, allowing rapid development of genuine understanding. Practice deliberately. Expanding requires more than passive consumption of information. Deliberate practice, structured, focused effort specifically designed to improve performance, creates meaningful knowledge expansion through active engagement with information, testing understanding through actual decisions or analyses, systematically learning from results, particularly mistakes, focusing on specific knowledge gaps, continuously increasing difficulty as competence develops. Learn across disciplines. Munger advocates developing worldly wisdom through studying fundamental concepts across disciplines. This multidisciplinary approach creates a lattice-work of mental models, enhancing understanding across domains. For financial knowledge, study psychology, cognitive biases, behavioral influences, history, market cycles, investment manias, mathematics, quantitative relationships, probability, economics, incentive structures, market mechanisms, accounting, reading financial statements, and even biology, concepts like evolution that have parallels in market competition. Apply the Teach It test. Richard Feynman developed a powerful learning technique. If you can't explain a concept in simple language to someone unfamiliar with the subject, you don't truly understand it. Feynman, as cited in Gleich, 1992. This Teach It test reveals whether you've developed genuine comprehension or merely familiarity with terminology. Teaching forces clarification of fuzzy thinking and identification of logical gaps that might otherwise remain unrecognized. The paradoxical freedom of boundaries. The circle of competence might initially appear restrictive, limiting activities to areas of established expertise rather than exploring exciting new opportunities. But this perspective misunderstands the profound freedom that comes from respecting knowledge boundaries, By focusing where your understanding provides a genuine edge, you create freedom from catastrophic mistakes. The most devastating financial errors typically occur not within your circle of competence, but when venturing beyond it without recognizing limitations. Freedom to leverage your unique insights. Every person possesses unique knowledge from education, professional experience, and personal interests. Focusing where this knowledge provides genuine advantage allows leveraging these insights effectively. Freedom from emotional toll. Making decisions in areas you don't fully comprehend creates anxiety, second guessing, and reactivity to market movements. Operating within your circle provides confidence that comes from genuine understanding, freedom to develop deep expertise. By focusing learning efforts concentrically on existing competence, you develop a deeper, more nuanced understanding rather than collecting fragments across disconnected domains. The most successful investors understand this paradox. Buffett's extraordinary success stems not from attempting to master the entire investment universe, but from focusing intensively where his understanding provided genuine insight. Knowing what you know and what you don't might be the most valuable financial knowledge of all. Chapter 6. Second-order thinking. And then what? These three simple words represent the essence of second-order thinking, a mental model that distinguishes exceptional financial decision-makers from average ones. While most people stop their analysis at immediate consequences, true financial wisdom requires asking, and then what happens next? And after that? Howard Marks explains, first-level thinking is simplistic and superficial, and just about everyone can do it. All the first-level thinker needs is an opinion about the future. Second-level thinking is deep, complex, and convoluted. Marks, 2011. Thinking beyond the immediate consequences. Consider how different thinking approaches play out in an investment scenario. First-order thinking. This new technology company is growing rapidly and getting media attention. I should buy the stock before it goes higher. Second-order thinking. This company is indeed growing rapidly, which has already attracted significant investor attention, likely driving the stock price up beyond what fundamentals justify. If growth slows even slightly below expectations, the stock could decline despite continued expansion. Additionally, their visibility will attract new competitors, potentially reducing margins. High expectations also create pressure for management to prioritize short-term results over sustainable growth. Second-order thinking traces through multiple consequences, feedback loops, and time horizons. It considers not just what will happen, but how other market participants will react, how those reactions will influence subsequent events, and how dynamics will unfold over time. This approach creates a significant competitive advantage precisely because it's uncommon. Most financial media encourages first-order thinking, focusing on immediate news and simple narratives. Those who think multiple steps ahead see opportunities and risks invisible to others who focus solely on immediate outcomes. The power extends beyond investing to all financial decisions. Career decisions. First order. This new job offers a $15,000 salary increase. I should take it. Second order. This job offers a $15,000 increase, but requires moving to a higher cost area with housing costing $12,000 more annually. The position involves longer hours and more travel, increasing childcare costs by $8,000 annually, and reducing time for my side business, potentially decreasing that income by $10,000. The specialized role may offer fewer transferable skills for future positions. Major purchases. First order. I can afford the monthly payment on this luxury SUV, and it will be enjoyable to drive. Second order. Beyond the payment, this vehicle will have higher insurance costs, require premium fuel, depreciate rapidly, and cost more to maintain after warranty. These resources could otherwise be invested, compounding over 7 to 10 years. The initial enjoyment will likely diminish through hedonic adaptation, while the financial impact persists. The cognitive challenge of second-order thinking stems from several factors. Immediate consequences are more visible than distant ones. Humans naturally discount future outcomes, temporal discounting. Tracing interactions requires significant mental effort. Feedback loops often behave counterintuitively. How to anticipate long-term financial impact. Developing effective second-order thinking requires systematic approaches. The decision tree method. Decision trees map potential outcomes and their subsequent consequences, creating a visualization of possibilities rather than a single projected outcome. Thomas applied this when considering early retirement. Rather than simply calculating whether his savings seemed adequate based on average returns, he developed a comprehensive decision tree with branches for different market scenarios, health outcomes, tax policy changes, housing market fluctuations, and inflation rates. For each branch, he mapped subsequent options, continuing part-time work, relocating, adjusting withdrawal rates, or returning to full-time employment. This revealed vulnerabilities that wouldn't have been apparent through simpler analysis, leading him to work 2 additional years for greater resilience. The pre-mortem technique. This involves imagining a decision has failed and then working backward to identify what caused the failure, counteracting optimism bias by legitimizing critical thinking before committing. Sarah employed this when evaluating a rental property. After running standard projections showing healthy returns, she conducted a pre-mortem exercise, imagining the investment had become a financial drain 3 years later. This highlighted several vulnerabilities: tenant concentration risk from nearby major employers, aging HVAC system requiring replacement sooner than budgeted, potential competition from new apartment developments, and inadequate vacancy allowances. Furthermore, this analysis led her to negotiate a lower purchase price, increase maintenance reserves, and develop contingency plans, creating significantly more resilience. Systems thinking. Systems thinking examines how different elements interact within a larger system rather than analyzing components in isolation, explicitly focusing on relationships and feedback loops rather than linear cause-effect chains. Michael applied this to family financial planning, mapping interconnections between savings, investments, housing, career decisions, and spending. This showed how career choices impacted both income and the time available for managing investments. It also showed how housing decisions shaped costs and career mobility, while spending habits either fueled financial growth or created stress cycles. Avoiding short-term gratification traps. Perhaps the most valuable application involves recognizing and avoiding short-term gratification traps, situations where immediate benefits come at the expense of greater long-term costs. The debt acceleration trap. Using debt to accelerate consumption often creates dangerous feedback loops. Interest costs significantly increase the total price. Monthly payments reduce future flexibility. The psychological ease of credit purchases leads to additional debt. Assets purchased with consumer debt typically depreciate while obligations remain. The immediate gratification habit strengthens over time. Implement a self-imposed waiting period for significant purchases, perhaps 30 days for anything over $250, allowing initial emotional responses to subside and creating space for rational evaluation of long-term consequences. The lifestyle inflation cycle. Income increases often trigger lifestyle inflation, creating particularly challenging second-order traps. Each upgrade typically involves permanent increases to baseline expenses. Elevated fixed costs reduce flexibility and resilience. The psychological reference point for normal spending continuously rises. Each commitment of future income reduces options for saving and investing. Consider institutionalizing lifestyle lag, deliberately maintaining your current lifestyle for 6 to 12 months after income increases, directing new resources to savings and investments before lifestyle inflation occurs. The opportunity cost cascade. Many financial decisions eliminate not just one alternative, but entire pathways of future options. Mark encountered this when deciding between a higher-paying corporate position or a promising startup with lower initial compensation but equity potential. The corporate path would likely lead to predictable advancement, while the startup experience, regardless of ultimate success, would develop entrepreneurial skills and relationships, potentially leading to opportunities unavailable through corporate progression. Explicitly map how current choices affect future options, consider what pathways you close, and value flexibility, particularly early in your financial life. Implementation, the second-order thinking framework. Identify the decision context. Define what you're evaluating and what you hope to accomplish. Map first-order consequences. Identify immediate outcomes. Ask critical second-order questions. And then what might happen? How might people respond? What systems might change? What feedback loops might develop? Identify interaction effects. Look for reinforcing effects, canceling effects, threshold effects, and delay effects. Examine different time horizons. Evaluate consequences across short-term, 1 year, medium-term, 1 to 5 years, and long-term, 5+ years. Incorporate scenario thinking. Consider how decisions might unfold under different plausible futures. Review through inversion. Ask, how could this decision lead to outcomes I want to avoid? Develop monitoring mechanisms. Establish indicators to track as consequences unfold. Financial success ultimately comes not from sporadic brilliant moves, but from consistently making slightly better decisions than average over long periods. Second-order thinking provides the framework for these consistently better choices. Seeing beyond the obvious, anticipating how systems will respond, and understanding how today's decisions shape tomorrow's possibilities. Develop the habit of asking, "and then what?" whenever making significant financial decisions. This simple question, pursued with persistence and intellectual honesty, might be the most valuable addition to your financial mental toolkit. Chapter 7. Probabilistic Thinking. In 1654, a gambling problem sparked a mathematical breakthrough that would transform our understanding of uncertainty. French nobleman Antoine Gombeau approached mathematician Blaise Pascal about a puzzling betting proposition. Pascal's correspondence with Pierre de Fermat effectively created probability theory, the framework for understanding uncertain outcomes. David, 1962. Their insight remains fundamental today. Under conditions of uncertainty, we can't predict exact outcomes, but we can identify the range of possibilities and their relative likelihoods. This probabilistic approach provides a structured way to make decisions when certainty is impossible. Making decisions under uncertainty. Financial decisions exist on a spectrum of uncertainty. Complete certainty. Outcomes are guaranteed and precisely known. Risk. Multiple outcomes are possible with knowable probabilities. Uncertainty. Multiple outcomes are possible with unclear probabilities. Fundamental uncertainty. Even the range of possible outcomes isn't fully known. Most significant financial decisions involve risk or uncertainty, where multiple outcomes remain possible and perfect. Prediction is impossible. In these domains, probabilistic thinking provides essential tools for making sound choices despite incomplete information. Consider James, approaching retirement with a $1 million portfolio. How much can he safely withdraw annually without depleting his savings? There's no certain answer. Future market returns, inflation rates, and his lifespan remain unknown. Instead of seeking a single correct withdrawal rate, James examines historical data suggesting a 4% initial withdrawal rate adjusted for inflation has succeeded in approximately 94% of past 30-year periods. This probability distribution allows him to make an informed decision while acknowledging the inevitable uncertainty. Probabilistic thinking differs fundamentally from deterministic thinking. Deterministic thinking seeks certainty. What will happen? Probabilistic thinking embraces uncertainty. What might happen with what likelihood? This shift creates several advantages: more accurate representation of reality, better risk assessment by considering ranges of outcomes, improved decision processes focused on preparing for multiple scenarios, reduced psychological stress by accepting uncertainty as inevitable, more effective learning by viewing unexpected outcomes as valuable information. The challenge stems partly from human psychology. Our brains evolved to seek certainty and clear narratives rather than probability distributions, creating cognitive biases that undermine probabilistic reasoning. Overconfidence bias, systematically overestimating our predictive abilities. Neglect of probability, focusing on outcomes while ignoring their likelihood. Hindsight bias, believing outcomes were more predictable than they actually were. Narrative fallacy, creating coherent stories to explain random events. Understanding risk versus reward. Probabilistic thinking transforms how we understand the relationship between risk and reward by recognizing that both represent distributions of possibilities rather than fixed values. Conventional approaches often reduce risk-reward evaluation to expected value, the probability-weighted average of possible outcomes. While useful, this single number obscures crucial information about the distribution of possibilities. Consider two investment opportunities, both with a $10,000 expected value. Investment A. 100% chance of $10,000 return. Investment B. 90% chance of $1,000 return, 10% chance of $91,000 return. Despite identical expected values, these investments differ dramatically in their risk profiles. Investment A provides certainty but no upside potential. Investment B offers significant upside with substantial probability of underperformance. Probabilistic thinking examines the entire distribution, including the range between best and worst cases, the shape of the distribution, symmetrical, skewed, fat-tailed, the likelihood of failing to meet minimum requirements, the correlation with other risks in your financial life. Robert applied this when evaluating options for his children's college funds. For funds needed within 3 to 5 years, he selected a conservative allocation despite lower expected returns, ensuring approximately 98% likelihood of preserving the minimum capital required. For funds needed in 15-plus years, he chose a more aggressive allocation, recognizing how the longer time horizon transformed the probability distribution, reducing the likelihood of permanent loss while significantly increasing upside potential. Fat tails and black swans. Conventional financial theory often assumes returns follow a normal distribution, the familiar bell curve where extreme outcomes become exponentially less likely. However, decades of market data reveal financial markets exhibit fat tails. Extreme outcomes occur significantly more frequently than normal distributions would predict. Nassim Nicholas Taleb popularized these concepts through his discussion of black swans, high impact, hard to predict, rare events beyond normal expectations. Taleb, 2007. Events like the 1987 market crash, the 2008 financial crisis, and the 2020 pandemic disruption often drive financial outcomes far more than the small daily fluctuations that receive disproportionate attention. Probabilistic thinking incorporates this reality by questioning distribution assumptions, stress testing against extreme scenarios, building resilience rather than focusing on prediction, maintaining humility about our predictive abilities. How to apply Bayesian thinking in investing. Bayesian thinking provides a formal framework for updating beliefs based on new evidence. This approach proves particularly valuable in investing, where decisions must be made with incomplete information that changes over time. The Bayesian framework involves 3 key elements: prior probability, your initial belief based on existing knowledge; new evidence, additional information that might influence your assessment; posterior probability, your updated belief after incorporating the new evidence. This differs fundamentally from both rigid adherence to initial views and overreaction to new information. Instead, Bayesian thinking seeks the appropriate balance, weighing both prior understanding and new developments. Consider evaluating a company's competitive position. Your prior belief suggests a 70% probability of maintaining market leadership. A competitor announces potentially disruptive technology. If disruption rarely succeeds in this industry, you might adjust to 65%. If the industry has a history of swift disruption, you might adjust to 40%. To implement Bayesian thinking effectively, establish explicit prior probabilities before encountering new information. Define what evidence would change your mind in advance to reduce post hoc rationalization. Weight evidence appropriately based on relevance, reliability, uniqueness, and precedent. Update incrementally rather than completely reversing positions with each new piece of information. Document your probability evolution to identify patterns and improve your assessment process. Sarah held shares in a technology company she believed had a 75% probability of delivering strong returns over the next 3 to 5 years. When the company missed quarterly expectations, she analyzed the earnings call transcript and found management attributed the shortfall to supply chain issues rather than demand weakness. Industry reports confirmed similar challenges affected competitors. She moderately adjusted her probability to 65%. Acknowledging increased uncertainty while recognizing the evidence didn't fundamentally invalidate her thesis, and maintained a modestly reduced position. Despite its logical elegance, Bayesian thinking faces psychological barriers. Confirmation bias. Seeking evidence supporting existing beliefs. Base rate neglect. Focusing on specific details while ignoring statistical patterns. Over-precision. Expressing excessive confidence in probability estimates. Narrative fallacy. Constructing coherent stories that impose patterns on randomness. Beyond calculating precise probabilities, valuable Bayesian principles include maintaining appropriate humility about predictions, building reversible, adaptable positions, focusing on process over prediction, seeking asymmetric opportunities where being approximately right generates significant returns while being wrong creates limited downside. Embracing the probabilistic mindset. Financial markets operate in a world of irreducible uncertainty, where multiple outcomes always remain possible and perfect prediction lies permanently beyond reach. Rather than treating this as a problem to solve, probabilistic thinking embraces it as fundamental reality, while providing structured methods for making sound choices despite inevitable uncertainty. This mindset transforms how you approach financial questions. Instead of what will happen, ask what might happen, with what likelihood, and how should I position myself accordingly. Instead of seeking certainty, build resilience against multiple scenarios while positioning for favorable probability distributions. Instead of treating unexpected outcomes as failures, view them as valuable information for updating your understanding. Remember philosopher Søren Kierkegaard's wisdom. Life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forwards. Kierkegaard, 1843-1987. Probabilistic thinking acknowledges this fundamental reality while providing the best available tools for making forward-looking decisions in an inherently uncertain world. Chapter 8. Asymmetric Risk-Reward. Imagine standing at a financial crossroads facing two investment opportunities. The first offers a potential 10% gain with a 50% risk of losing 5% of your capital. The second presents a potential 100% gain with the same 50% risk of losing 5%. Most people would instinctively choose the second option, yet surprisingly few deliberately structure their financial lives around this principle. Asymmetric risk-reward. Asymmetric risk-reward represents situations where the potential upside significantly outweighs the potential downside. This mental model fundamentally changes the mathematics of decision-making, transforming how successful investors and entrepreneurs approach uncertainty. Finding opportunities with limited downside and massive upside. Asymmetric opportunities share several key characteristics. 1. Capped or defined. Downside. The most powerful asymmetric opportunities feature limited downside risk. This might involve fixed initial investment with no additional capital requirements, structured protection mechanisms limiting potential losses, scenarios where the worst-case outcome remains manageable, positions sized appropriately to limit portfolio impact. 2. Open-ended or outsized upside. Complementing the limited downside is substantial, often uncapped upside potential through exponential growth possibilities rather than linear returns, involvement in emerging trends, technologies, or markets, potential for compounding benefits beyond initial expectations, opportunities for cascading positive outcomes from a single decision. Third, favorable probability distribution. True asymmetry isn't just about potential outcomes, but their likelihoods. The most attractive opportunities feature multiple paths to positive returns, few dependencies for success, anti-fragile elements that may benefit from volatility, uncorrelated or negatively correlated risk factors to your existing positions. Fourth, mispriced risk. Market inefficiencies often create situations where risk is mispriced, allowing savvy investors to capture asymmetric opportunities when conventional wisdom overestimates certain risks, complex situations obscure underlying value, temporary dislocations create pricing anomalies, behavioral biases lead to market overreactions. Charlie Munger describes the ideal investment approach as waiting for the fat pitch, patiently observing until an opportunity with overwhelmingly favorable odds appears. Munger, as cited in Kaufman, 2005. This patience proves crucial because genuinely asymmetric opportunities aren't commonplace. They typically emerge during market dislocations, technological transitions, or situations featuring significant information asymmetry. Consider Jeff Bezos' initial decision to start Amazon. He famously applied what he called a regret minimization framework, asking himself whether at age 80 he would regret not participating in the internet boom. Bezos, as cited in Stone, 2013. He calculated that he might lose his initial investment, but the potential upside was virtually unlimited. The downside was clearly defined, his savings and a well-paid job at a hedge fund, while the upside remained open-ended. History has validated the extreme asymmetry of this decision. How? Successful entrepreneurs and investors use this model. Legendary investors and entrepreneurs consistently structure their activities around asymmetric opportunities, though their specific approaches vary widely. The venture capital method. Venture capitalists have institutionalized asymmetric investing at scale. Their model acknowledges that most investments will fail, downside, but a few extraordinary successes, upside, will drive overall returns. Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal and early Facebook investor, articulates this approach directly. We don't have to be right that often. The business model is to be wrong 90% of the time and be right 10% of the time, but be right in a way that changes everything. Thiel, 2014. This approach requires extensive diversification across numerous opportunities, careful structuring of each investment to limit downside, maintaining reserves for follow-on investments and winners, willingness to accept frequent small losses while waiting for outsized gains. The Buffett approach. While venture capitalists embrace frequent small losses, Warren Buffett approaches asymmetry differently. His primary focus remains downside protection through careful analysis and valuation discipline. He creates asymmetric opportunity by investing in undervalued companies with durable competitive advantages, where downside risk is minimized by the margin of safety between purchase price and intrinsic value. Buffett's approach to asymmetry includes deep research to reduce analytical error, concentration in high-conviction opportunities, patience to wait for exceptionally favorable situations, emphasis on businesses with inherent compounding capabilities. The entrepreneur's calculated risk. Successful entrepreneurs frequently create asymmetric opportunities through careful risk management rather than blind risk-taking. Richard Branson, founder of the Virgin Group, exemplifies this approach. When launching Virgin Atlantic, he negotiated a crucial option to sell his aircraft back to Boeing if the venture failed, thereby capping his downside while maintaining unlimited upside potential. Branson, 2011. Sarah Blakely followed similar principles when building Spanx. Before quitting her day job, she developed her prototype, secured patents, and lined up manufacturers and retailers, all while investing just $5,000 of personal savings. Blakely, as cited in Walton, 2014. This methodical approach capped her downside while creating a billion-dollar upside potential. The entrepreneurial approach to asymmetry typically involves testing concepts with minimal initial investment, creating reversible decisions whenever possible, securing key assets or capabilities that provide a competitive edge, building step-by-step with validation at each stage. Examples of high-leverage, low-risk financial decisions. Asymmetric risk-reward opportunities exist beyond high-profile investments and business ventures. Many accessible financial decisions offer significant asymmetry when structured thoughtfully. Negotiation with optionality. Negotiation frequently presents an asymmetric opportunity. When Thomas was offered a new position with a 15% higher salary, he negotiated for performance-based equity compensation rather than pushing for a larger base salary increase. The downside was effectively zero. The original offer remained available, while the upside was substantial if the company performed well. Additionally, he negotiated a remote work option that required no salary concession but significantly improved his quality of life. In negotiation, asymmetry often comes from asking for considerations that cost the other party little but provide substantial value to you, structuring agreements with upside participation but limited downside exposure, maintaining alternatives that establish a floor for potential outcomes, seeking optionality rather than just immediate gains. Skill development asymmetry. Jennifer, a marketing professional, recognized that developing data analysis skills would require approximately 100 hours of focused learning. The downside was limited to this time investment, while the upside included a 30% salary increase, expanded career opportunities, and transferable skills applicable across industries. This skill development created dramatic asymmetry, the limited, defined downside with a substantial, open-ended upside. Skills that often create asymmetric opportunity include communication capabilities that enhance value across roles and industries, technical expertise with widespread application, specialized knowledge in growing domains, cross-disciplinary capabilities that bridge traditional boundaries, real estate optionality. Michael identified a distressed commercial property available significantly below replacement cost. Instead of purchasing immediately, he negotiated a low-cost option agreement, giving him exclusive rights to purchase within 6 months, while he conducted due diligence and secured financing. His downside was limited to the option cost, 2% of the purchase price, while his upside remained the property's full potential value. If zoning issues or structural problems emerged, he could walk away with only the option cost lost. Real estate asymmetry often emerges through option agreements limiting initial capital commitment, properties with multiple potential use cases, undervalued assets with correctable problems, flexible purchase terms that provide exit options. Insurance as asymmetric protection. Insurance represents one of the most accessible asymmetric opportunities. Rachel purchased disability insurance costing 1.5% of her annual income. The downside was this modest premium, while the upside was protection against catastrophic income loss that could derail her financial future. When an unexpected health condition prevented her from working for 8 months, the policy provided a 70% income replacement that preserved her savings and financial trajectory. Insurance creates asymmetry through small defined cost, premium, protecting against potentially unlimited downside, transferring catastrophic risk while retaining everyday risk, protecting your most valuable assets, earning capacity, health, creating financial security that enables appropriate risk-taking elsewhere. The most powerful financial approach combines multiple asymmetric opportunities. By consistently seeking favorable risk-reward profiles across various decisions, you build a significant advantage over time. While each asymmetric opportunity might deliver a modest advantage, their collective and compounding impact can transform your financial trajectory. As you move through subsequent chapters, keep this mental model at the forefront of your financial decision-making. Each opportunity should be evaluated not just for its expected return, but for its asymmetric potential, the relationship between what you could lose and what you might gain. By deliberately structuring your financial life around these favorable asymmetries, you dramatically improve your odds of exceptional success while protecting against devastating setbacks. Part 3: Behavioral Finance and Avoiding Money Pitfalls. Chapter 9: Loss Aversion and Sunk Cost Fallacy. In 1979, psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky published a groundbreaking paper introducing prospect theory, which revealed something profound about human psychology. We don't experience gains and losses symmetrically. Their research showed that the pain of losing $100 is approximately twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining $100. This asymmetry in how we experience financial outcomes, loss aversion, shapes our financial decisions in ways we rarely recognize. Kahneman and Tversky, 1979. Alongside this psychological quirk sits another, the sunk cost fallacy, our tendency to continue investing time, money, or effort based on what we've already committed, rather than on future prospects. Together, these biases create powerful psychological traps that ensnare even the most intelligent investors and financial decision-makers. Why losses feel worse than gains? Loss aversion isn't a character flaw or sign of irrationality. It's a fundamental feature of human psychology with deep evolutionary roots. Our ancestors lived in resource-scarce environments where losses could threaten survival, while gains beyond sufficiency offered diminishing benefits. Those who were more sensitive to losses had a survival advantage, and this trait became hardwired into our psychological makeup. The neural evidence is compelling. Functional MRI studies show that financial losses activate the same brain regions associated with physical pain, while gains activate reward centers more weakly. We are literally wired to feel losses more intensely than gains. Kuhnen and Knudsen, 2005. This asymmetry manifests in several ways that impact financial behavior. The endowment effect. We value what we already possess more highly than identical items we don't own. Homeowners typically value their properties 5 to 15% above market price simply because they own them. Status quo. Bias. We disproportionately prefer the current state of affairs and avoid changes that might create losses, even when the potential upside significantly outweighs the downside. Risk aversion and gains. Risk-seeking and losses. We tend to be risk-averse when facing potential gains, preferring a certain $500 over a 50% chance of $1,000, but become risk-seeking when facing losses, preferring a 50% chance of losing nothing over a certain $500 loss. Disposition effect. Investors commonly sell winning investments too quickly to lock in gains while holding losing investments too long, hoping to break even. This creates the perverse result of selling assets with continuing upside while retaining those with continuing downside. Consider Michael, who invested equal amounts in two stocks. One increased 30% in value, while the other declined 25%. Despite his diversified portfolio strategy calling for regular rebalancing, he felt a strong impulse to sell the winner and keep the loser. The thought of selling the losing stock and making the loss real created almost physical discomfort, while selling the winner produced immediate pleasure by locking in the gain. This loss aversion led him to make decisions contradicting his own investment strategy. The intensity of loss aversion varies across domains and individuals. Professional traders often demonstrate reduced loss aversion compared to amateurs, showing it can be mitigated through training and awareness. Nevertheless, it remains a powerful force even among financial experts. Studies of institutional money managers reveal a persistent reluctance to realize losses, particularly near year-end when performance reporting occurs. How sunk costs trap people in bad financial decisions. Don't throw good money after bad. This common wisdom acknowledges the sunk cost fallacy. Yet we regularly violate this principle, continuing to invest in losing propositions because of what we have already committed. Rational decision-making should consider only future costs and benefits, treating past investments as irrelevant once they cannot be recovered. Yet we consistently allow these sunk costs to influence ongoing decisions through several mechanisms. Commitment escalation. Having invested in a course of action, we often increase our commitment despite negative feedback. A classic example is the investor who buys more shares of a declining stock to lower the average purchase price. Focusing on recovering past losses rather than evaluating the investment's future prospects. Psychological accounting. We mentally track investments in specific accounts and feel compelled to make them profitable individually rather than optimizing our overall portfolio. This creates artificial barriers to exiting underperforming investments. Waste avoidance. We have a deep psychological aversion to wasting resources, causing us to continue investing to avoid acknowledging that prior investments are lost. Self-justification. Abandoning investments means admitting mistakes or failures. Continuing allows us to maintain the belief that our initial decision was sound. Jennifer's experience illustrates this trap. After spending $15,000 renovating an investment property, she discovered significant structural issues requiring another $50,000 to address. Despite projections showing the property would remain unprofitable even after these repairs, she proceeded with the additional investment, repeatedly telling herself, "I've put too much into this to walk away now." The initial $15,000, a sunk cost that couldn't be recovered, influenced a decision that should have been based solely on future prospects. The sunk cost fallacy appears across numerous financial domains. Business investments. Companies frequently continue pouring resources into failing projects because of substantial prior investments. Kodak maintained its film business far too long after digital photography emerged, partly due to massive investments in film technology and manufacturing. Anthony, 2016. Financial products. Consumers maintain expensive, unsuitable financial products, insurance policies, investment funds, credit cards, because they've already invested time setting them up or paid initiation fees. Career decisions. Professionals remain in unsatisfying or low-paying careers because they've invested years of education and experience, despite better opportunities elsewhere. Real estate. Property owners hold underperforming investments because of emotional attachment to renovation decisions and improvement efforts already made. The larger the sunk cost, the more powerful its psychological pull. Big financial commitments like home purchases, business investments, or education create correspondingly powerful sunk cost traps. Overcoming psychological money biases. While these biases are deeply ingrained, they aren't immutable. Specific strategies can help mitigate their influence. Recognize the emotions. Awareness is the first step toward management. When making financial decisions, explicitly ask yourself, am I feeling unusually attached to this investment? Am I focusing on what I've already spent rather than future prospects? Simply recognizing these emotions helps reduce their impact. Focus on opportunity costs. Reframe decisions to emphasize what you're giving up by continuing current investments rather than what you've already spent. If I invest $50,000 more in this property, what other opportunities am I forgoing? Implement decision rules. Before emotions arise, create predetermined rules for investment decisions. For example, I will sell any investment that declines 15% from my purchase price, or I will evaluate renovation decisions based solely on projected ROI, regardless of previous expenditures. These rules help circumvent emotional responses in the moment. Use decision frameworks. Formal decision frameworks force systematic evaluation of future costs and benefits while excluding sunk costs. Zero-based thinking, asking knowing what I know now, would I make this investment today, can be particularly effective. Engage third-party perspectives. Seek objective input from people emotionally disconnected from your previous decisions. Financial advisors, business partners, or even financially savvy friends can help identify when you're falling prey to these biases. Practice. Admitting mistakes. Develop comfort with acknowledging errors. Keeping an investment mistake journal where you record decisions that didn't work out helps normalize the experience and reduces the self-justification that drives the sunk cost fallacy. Reframe losses as tuition. View financial losses as payments for valuable lessons rather than failures. This perspective shift makes losses more psychologically acceptable and easier to act upon. Robert applied several of these strategies when facing a difficult decision about his underperforming small business. After investing 3 years and $120,000, the business remained unprofitable. He recognized his reluctance to close stemmed largely from sunk cost thinking and loss aversion. By formally documenting what he'd learned from the experience, his tuition, and using zero-based thinking to evaluate the business's future prospects independently from his previous investment, he made the difficult but financially sound decision to close. The impact of overcoming these biases can be profound. Investors who successfully manage loss aversion typically outperform their peers by 3 to 4% annually. Barber and Odeon, 2013. Business owners who avoid sunk cost traps allocate resources more efficiently, pivoting away from failing strategies more quickly. Individuals who overcome these biases make career transitions based on future opportunities rather than past investments, often discovering significantly better financial outcomes. By understanding and actively managing these powerful psychological forces, you can make financial decisions based on future prospects rather than past commitments or emotional asymmetries. In doing so, you'll join the minority of financial decision makers who escape these common psychological traps and enjoy the substantial advantages that come from this psychological freedom. Chapter 10. The Endowment Effect and Status Quo Bias. In 1990, economist Richard Thaler conducted a simple yet revealing experiment. He handed out coffee mugs to half the class, then flipped the script, asking those with mugs what price they'd sell them for and those without what they'd be willing to pay. Thaler, 1990. The rational economic prediction? Both groups should value the mugs similarly. The reality? Mug owners demanded roughly twice as much to part with their mugs as non-owners were willing to pay. This phenomenon, the endowment effect, illustrates our tendency to value items more highly simply because we own them. Alongside its close cousin, status quo bias, our preference for maintaining current conditions. These psychological tendencies create significant obstacles to rational financial decision-making. Why we overvalue what we own. The endowment effect manifests in numerous financial contexts. Homeowners consistently believe their property is worth more than market appraisals suggest. Investors resist selling underperforming assets they've held for years. Business owners turn down fair acquisition offers because they've developed an emotional attachment to their companies. This tendency runs deeper than financial irrationality. It reflects fundamental aspects of human psychology. Loss aversion connection. The endowment effect directly relates to loss aversion discussed in the previous chapter. Once we own something, giving it up represents a loss, which we feel more intensely than a corresponding gain. We demand a premium to accept this psychologically painful loss. Consider Martha, who inherited shares of a well-established manufacturing company from her grandfather. When her financial advisor suggested selling these shares to create a more diversified portfolio, Martha experienced strong resistance, though she had never shown particular interest in owning this company before inheriting the shares. The moment the stock became hers, its psychological value increased substantially. Psychological ownership. Ownership creates a partial merger between self-identity and possessions. We begin viewing our possessions as extensions of ourselves, making rational valuation difficult. This psychological ownership doesn't require legal ownership. Merely feeling responsible for selecting an investment can trigger the effect. Financial advisors observe this regularly when clients resist selling investments they personally selected, even when those investments no longer serve their financial goals. The client's role in choosing the initial investment creates a sense of ownership that goes beyond financial considerations. The IKEA effect. The more effort we invest in something, the more we value it. A phenomenon dubbed the IKEA effect after the furniture retailer whose products require customer assembly. In financial contexts, investments that require more research, monitoring, or decision-making often become overvalued precisely because we've invested time and mental energy in them. James spent months researching and selecting individual stocks for his portfolio, checking prices daily and reading quarterly reports. When presented with evidence that his stock picks underperformed market indexes, he strongly resisted moving to index funds. His extensive effort created a psychological attachment that influenced his valuation, independent of actual performance. Familiarity and certainty. We naturally value the known over the unknown. Investments, insurance policies, and financial arrangements we've lived with for years develop a certainty premium in our minds, even when objectively inferior to alternatives. The fear of change in financial decisions. While the endowment effect primarily concerns how we value what we already possess, status quo bias revolves around our resistance to change regardless of ownership. This bias manifests as inertia in financial decision-making, with people maintaining existing arrangements despite clear benefits from changing. Default power. The extraordinary influence of defaults demonstrates status quo bias in action. When employers automatically enroll employees in 401k plans, participation rates typically exceed 90%. Madrian and Shea, 2001. When enrollment requires active choice, participation often drops below 60%. The status quo, whatever it happens to be, exerts a powerful influence over financial outcomes. Omission versus commission. Status quo bias partially stems from how we judge actions differently from inactions. We tend to feel more regret for negative outcomes resulting from changes we actively made, errors of commission, than for equally negative outcomes resulting from maintaining the status quo, errors of omission. This creates asymmetric decision psychology. The potential regret from making a change feels more intense than the potential regret from not making a change, even when objectively identical. Complexity avoidance. Financial decisions often involve comparing complex alternatives across multiple dimensions. Status quo bias becomes particularly strong in these situations, as the cognitive effort required for thorough evaluation exceeds what many people are willing to invest. Maintaining current arrangements requires no additional cognitive work. Thomas maintained a portfolio of high-fee mutual funds for years despite regularly reading about the advantages of low-cost index funds. The prospect of researching specific index funds, opening new accounts, transferring assets, and adjusting his financial planning created enough complexity that he continually postponed making changes, even though he intellectually recognized the benefits would substantially outweigh the transitional effort. The anxiety factor. Change creates anxiety, particularly with important financial matters. This emotional discomfort drives status quo bias independent of rational considerations. Many people maintain suboptimal financial arrangements simply to avoid the anxiety of transition. Limited attention. Our limited attention naturally focuses on immediate concerns, financial arrangements operating in the background. Insurance policies, retirement accounts, mortgage terms receive periodic attention at best. Without deliberate review mechanisms, the status quo persists simply because alternatives never enter our decision space. How to make rational investment choices. Despite these powerful psychological barriers, specific strategies can help overcome the endowment effect and status quo bias. Regular portfolio reframing. One powerful technique involves mentally selling your entire portfolio and asking whether you would repurchase each position at current market prices. This thought experiment helps separate past decisions from current valuations, reducing endowment effects. Elizabeth applied this approach to her investment portfolio annually. She created a spreadsheet listing every investment position as cash at current market value, then decided how she would allocate this cash if starting fresh. This practice helped her identify several long-standing positions she wouldn't choose to buy at present prices, making the selling decision psychologically easier. Third-party perspective. Seeking perspective from someone without attachment to your current holdings can provide valuable objectivity. This could be a financial advisor or simply a financially knowledgeable friend who can evaluate your situation without ownership bias. Opportunity cost focus. Actively focusing on what you're giving up by maintaining the status quo counteracts these biases. For each financial arrangement you maintain, explicitly identify the best available alternative and what you sacrifice by not switching. Zero-based decision-making. Adopt an approach where the status quo receives no advantage in your decision process. Evaluate all options, including your current arrangements, as if considering them for the first time, using consistent criteria. Michael implemented this approach when evaluating his insurance policies. Rather than starting with his current coverage and considering changes, he researched insurance options as if uninsured, gathering fresh quotes and comparing features across providers. This process revealed that his long-held auto policy had become significantly overpriced relative to market alternatives, a fact he had missed during routine renewals. Systematic review calendar. Establish a regular calendar for reviewing different aspects of your financial life. These predetermined review points create natural opportunities to overcome status quo inertia. Active choice framing. Reframe financial decisions to require active choice rather than defaulting to the status quo. Instead of asking, "Should I change my investment allocation?" ask, "Which investment allocation should I choose considering all available options, including my current one?" Incremental transitions. When status quo bias creates resistance to beneficial changes, consider implementing changes incrementally rather than all at once. While financially suboptimal, this approach can overcome psychological barriers that would otherwise prevent any improvement. Rachel struggled with moving her retirement savings from her bank's proprietary high-fee funds to lower-cost alternatives. Though intellectually convinced of the benefits, she felt uncomfortable making the change all at once. By transferring 25% of her assets quarterly over a year, she overcame her psychological resistance while still achieving the desired financial improvement. Pre-commitment strategies. Create mechanisms that automatically implement changes, bypassing the need for active decisions at implementation time. Automatic portfolio rebalancing, scheduled insurance reviews, and multi-step transitions established in advance can overcome the inertia that status quo bias creates. The financial impact of overcoming these biases can be substantial. Research suggests that endowment effect and status quo bias collectively cost typical investors between 1 to 3% in annual returns through excessive trading costs, tax inefficiency, failure to rebalance, and maintenance of high-fee investments. By implementing these strategies, you can make more rational financial decisions based on current value and future prospects, rather than psychological attachment or decision inertia. While these biases can never be completely eliminated, they reflect fundamental aspects of human psychology. Awareness and deliberate countermeasures can significantly reduce their impact on your financial outcomes. The most successful investors and financial decision makers aren't those who lack these natural human tendencies, but those who recognize their influence and implement systems to counteract them. By joining their ranks, you gain a significant advantage in your journey toward financial success. Chapter 11. The Availability Heuristic and Recency Bias. In October 1987, global stock markets crashed. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted 22.6% in a single day, the largest one-day percentage decline in history. Carlson, 2007. In the aftermath, many investors swore off stocks entirely, convinced another crash was imminent. Those who exited the market missed one of history's greatest bull markets, with stocks delivering nearly 18% annual returns over the next decade. Why did so many smart investors make this costly mistake? They fell victim to the availability heuristic and recency bias, powerful psychological tendencies that distort financial judgment by giving disproportionate weight to events that are recent, vivid, and emotionally charged. How recent events distort financial judgment. The availability heuristic, first identified by psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, describes our tendency to judge probability based on how easily examples come to mind. Tversky and Kahneman, 1973. Recent events emotionally impactful or extensively covered by media become cognitively available, leading us to overestimate their likelihood of recurring. Recency bias, a close relative, causes us to give excessive weight to recent events when making predictions, essentially assuming that whatever has happened lately will continue to happen. These biases fundamentally distort financial decision-making in several crucial ways. Market trend extrapolation. Investors routinely project recent market performance into the future, despite overwhelming evidence that markets are cyclical rather than linear. During prolonged bull markets, expectations for future returns typically rise to unrealistic levels. Conversely, after significant downturns, pessimism often exceeds what fundamentals justify. After the 2008 to 2009 financial crisis, a generation of young adults developed deep skepticism towards stock market investing, based on their formative exposure to market turmoil. Many maintained excessive cash positions for years afterward, missing substantial market gains that would have accelerated their wealth-building journey. Risk perception distortion. Our perception of investment risk fluctuates dramatically based on recent market behavior. Studies show that average investors' willingness to accept risk correlates strongly with recent market performance, increasing during bull markets and decreasing after downturns. Weber and H.C. 1998. This creates the perverse pattern of seeking more risk precisely when markets have become expensive and avoiding risk after prices have declined. Sarah, a typically conservative investor, gradually increased her stock allocation during the 2010 to 2019 bull market, eventually holding 90% of stocks by early 2020, far more than her long-term risk tolerance warranted. When markets plunged during the pandemic's early weeks, this recency-influenced positioning led to panic selling near market lows, permanently damaging her retirement preparedness. Narrative selection. The availability heuristic causes us to construct financial narratives based on patterns that are easily recalled rather than statistically valid. Following the 2008 financial crisis, many investors became hyper-focused on spotting the next housing bubble, scrutinizing this specific risk while potentially overlooking other vulnerabilities. Overreaction to vivid examples. Emotionally charged financial stories receive disproportionate weight in our decision-making. A friend's individual stock success story that generates 300% returns can influence investment choices more significantly than extensive statistical evidence supporting index investing, simply because the dramatic success story is more cognitively available. The media amplifies these biases by preferentially covering dramatic and recent events. Market crashes receive vastly more coverage than gradual rises. Investment disasters generate more attention than consistent success. This selective coverage further distorts our perception of financial reality, avoiding panic and hype in investing. These biases manifest most destructively during market extremes, driving both waves of panic during downturns and unwarranted enthusiasm during bull markets. The panic cycle. Market declines trigger a predictable psychological sequence. Initial discomfort escalates to anxiety, then fear, and potentially panic as losses mount. The availability heuristic and recency bias feed this cycle by making scenarios of further decline increasingly available mentally. News coverage focuses increasingly on negative outlooks, making worst-case scenarios seem more probable than statistical evidence warrants. This psychological cascade often leads to selling at precisely the wrong time, when prices already reflect pessimism and subsequent returns tend to be above average. Investors who succumbed to panic in March 2020, selling after the pandemic-induced market crash, soon regretted their decisions as markets recovered dramatically. The hype cycle. During extended bull markets, these same biases operate in reverse. Initial enthusiasm grows into confidence, then exuberance and potentially irrational euphoria. Recent positive experiences make further gains seem increasingly likely. Media coverage highlights spectacular success stories, making outsized returns appear more attainable than historical evidence suggests. This psychological progression typically leads to excessive risk-taking precisely when markets have become expensive, and subsequent returns tend to be below average. The late 1990s tech bubble exemplified this pattern, with investors abandoning diversification principles to concentrate on technology stocks after years of spectacular sector performance. To avoid these destructive cycles, successful investors develop specific countermeasures. Historical perspective. Integration. Actively incorporating longer historical contexts helps counterbalance recency effects. Michael, a financial advisor, maintains a market history dashboard showing current valuations compared to historical ranges. When clients express panic during downturns, he demonstrates that current conditions typically represent normal market behavior rather than an unprecedented catastrophe. Personal financial history documentation. Maintaining records of your own financial reactions during previous market extremes creates a powerful perspective during subsequent episodes. Thomas kept a detailed investment journal during the 2008 financial crisis, documenting both market events and his emotional responses. During the 2020 pandemic market decline, reviewing these entries reminded him that his previous impulse to sell at market lows had been counterproductive, helping him maintain his investment strategy despite similar psychological pressure. Decision rules established during calm periods. Creating explicit decision criteria during emotionally neutral periods helps override bias-driven impulses during market extremes. These might include predefined rebalancing thresholds, dollar-cost averaging commitments, or criteria for evaluating whether fundamental economic conditions have genuinely changed. Media consumption management. Deliberately limiting exposure to financial media during market extremes helps reduce availability bias. Research shows that investors who consume financial news daily during market downturns are significantly more likely to sell than those who check their portfolios less frequently, regardless of underlying financial circumstances. Carlson et al. 2009. Strategies for making objective money decisions. Beyond managing these biases during market extremes, several broader strategies help maintain objectivity in financial decision-making. Base rate integration. Actively incorporating statistical base rates into decision processes counters availability-driven distortions. When evaluating investment opportunities, explicitly asking, what historically happens to investments with these characteristics? Provides a critical perspective beyond recent performance. Jennifer applied this approach when considering cryptocurrency investments in 2021. Despite friends' dramatic success stories, she researched historical patterns of speculative investment manias, incorporating this broader context alongside recent performance. This perspective led her to limit cryptocurrency to a small portfolio allocation, despite social pressure to invest more heavily. Diverse information sources. Deliberately seeking viewpoints that contradict recent trends helps mitigate recency bias. During bull markets, this might mean reading bearish analysis. During downturns, seeking historically grounded optimistic perspectives. Decision journaling. Maintaining structured records of financial decisions, including your reasoning, expectations, and emotional state, creates accountability and learning opportunities. Reviewing these records periodically helps identify patterns of bias in your decision-making. Robert maintained a detailed investment journal for over a decade. A periodic review revealed a consistent pattern. His investment ideas during market highs typically underperformed, while opportunities he identified during market pessimism delivered superior returns. This insight helped him recognize when recency bias was affecting his judgment. Systematic decision frameworks. Using consistent evaluation criteria across different market environments reduces recency influences. Whether markets have recently surged or plunged, applying the same analytical process to investment decisions helps maintain objectivity. Statistical validation requirements. Requiring statistical evidence beyond anecdotes before acting on investment ideas helps counter the availability heuristic. When considering sector-specific investments, Rachel required at least 20 years of performance data to evaluate whether apparent opportunities represented statistical patterns or simply recent deviations. Delay mechanisms. Implementing mandatory waiting periods before acting on investment impulses creates space for more deliberate analysis. A simple 48-hour rule before making significant portfolio changes helps reduce emotionally driven decisions. The most effective approach combines multiple strategies, creating layers of protection against these pervasive biases. No single technique eliminates their influence completely, but collectively they can significantly improve decision quality. The financial advantages of overcoming these biases are substantial. Research suggests that availability heuristic and recency bias cost typical investors between 1 to 3% annually in reduced returns through ill-timed market entries and exits. Over decades, this performance gap compounds dramatically. By recognizing how recent vivid experiences distort your financial judgment and implementing deliberate countermeasures, you position yourself to make more objective decisions through all market conditions. This psychological resilience represents one of the most valuable assets you can develop on your journey toward financial success. Part 4: Wealth Creation, Growth, and Legacy. Chapter 12: The Network Effect and Scale Thinking. In 1990, a fax machine had limited value if you owned the only one. But each additional fax machine in the world made your machine more valuable. This phenomenon, where a product or service increases in value as more people use it, demonstrates the network effect, one of the most powerful wealth creation forces in modern economics. Metcalfe, 2013. Paired with scale thinking, the deliberate approach to creating systems that deliver increasing returns as they grow, these mental models have created more wealth in recent decades than perhaps any other business concept. Though most commonly associated with technology companies, these principles extend far beyond Silicon Valley, offering profound insights into your personal financial journey. How to leverage networks for financial growth. Networks create value through connections. The mathematical potential of these connections grows exponentially. A network with 10 members has 45 possible connections, while a network with 100 members has 4,950 possible connections. This exponential growth helps explain why network-based businesses can create extraordinary value rapidly. Several network types offer distinct financial opportunities. Professional networks. Your professional network may be your most valuable financial asset. Unlike most resources that deplete with use, professional networks strengthen and expand through active engagement. Each connection potentially opens doors to opportunities, information, and further connections. Sarah, a mid-career financial analyst, deliberately cultivated her professional network by maintaining regular contact with former colleagues, actively participating in industry associations, and sharing valuable insights through professional social media. When her employer announced restructuring, she secured 4 interview opportunities through network connections before the job cuts were publicly announced. Her strongest job offer came through a second-degree connection, someone she knew through someone she knew, demonstrating the power of extended network reach. Professional networks create value through information advantages from early awareness of opportunities, credibility enhancement through trusted introductions, access to hidden job markets and investment opportunities, collaborative possibilities that create mutual benefit. To leverage professional networks effectively, adopt a giving mindset. The most valuable network participants provide value consistently rather than simply extracting it. Sharing useful information, making thoughtful introductions, and offering genuine assistance creates a reservoir of reciprocity that yields returns over time. Focus on relationship quality. Strong connections with 50 professionals typically provide more value than weak connections with 500. Depth matters more than breadth, particularly for high-value opportunities. Create systematic engagement practices. Successful network builders develop systems for regular connection, quarterly coffee meetings, monthly email updates, or annual industry event participation. These systematic practices maintain relationships that might otherwise fade through neglect. Knowledge networks. Beyond personal connections, participating in knowledge networks, communities where specialized information is shared and developed, creates substantial financial advantage. Thomas joined several online communities focused on real estate investing. Through active participation, he gained access to market insights, off-market property opportunities, and financing strategies rarely discussed in mainstream sources. This knowledge network helped him identify and secure a multi-unit property with exceptional cash flow characteristics before it reached the open market. Financial leverage networks. Some of the most powerful network effects emerge when people pool financial resources. Investment clubs, angel investor networks, and crowdfunding platforms exemplify this approach, enabling participants to access opportunities beyond their individual capacity. Jennifer participated in an angel investor network that allowed members to evaluate and invest in early-stage companies collectively. By combining expertise and capital, the group accessed investment opportunities typically reserved for venture capital firms, while diversifying risk across multiple investments. This approach gave her portfolio exposure to high-growth potential investments that would have been inaccessible individually. Scaling your income and wealth. Traditional financial advice focuses primarily on saving and investing fixed income, an important but limited approach. Scale thinking introduces a more powerful perspective, creating systems that generate increasing returns with growth. Several approaches help apply scale thinking to personal wealth creation. Skills with scale potential. Not all skills offer equal financial scale. Those that create value once and can be sold repeatedly offer vastly greater income potential than those requiring continuous time input. Michael, a corporate attorney, recognized that his hourly billing model inherently limited his income potential regardless of his expertise. He gradually shifted toward developing standardized legal products, contract templates, compliance frameworks, and training systems that required significant upfront investment but could serve multiple clients simultaneously. This transformation allowed his income to decouple from his time, growing beyond what hourly work could ever produce. Skills offering superior scale potential typically share these characteristics. Value creation that can be captured repeatedly without proportional time investment. Expertise that can be transformed into products, systems, or intellectual property. Capabilities enhanced rather than depleted through repeated application. Knowledge that becomes more valuable as more people use or depend on it. Business models with network effects. For entrepreneurs, business models incorporating network effects offer extraordinary wealth creation potential. Each additional user makes the service more valuable for all users, creating a virtuous cycle of growth and increasing returns. Rachel launched a specialty marketplace connecting handmade furniture artisans with designers and homeowners. As more craftspeople joined, the platform offered greater selection, attracting more buyers. As more buyers participated, more artisans joined to access the growing customer base. This self-reinforcing cycle created value far beyond traditional business growth patterns. Even without building network effect businesses personally, understanding which businesses exhibit these characteristics improves investment decision quality. Companies with strong network effects often develop competitive moats that strengthen over time, frequently outperforming expectations. Investment approaches with scale advantages. Certain investment strategies inherently benefit from scale. Understanding these advantages helps optimize your approach as your assets grow. In real estate, larger portfolios create scale benefits through consolidated property management, more favorable financing terms, and risk diversification across multiple properties and markets. Robert began with a single duplex but systematically expanded to a 22-unit portfolio over a decade. At this scale, he could justify hiring professional management, negotiate better financing terms, and implement tax optimization strategies unavailable to smaller investors. In financial markets, increasing investment scale opens access to asset classes, fee structures, and investment opportunities unavailable at lower wealth levels. Understanding this progression helps investors prepare for and capitalize on these advantages as their portfolios grow. Lessons from tech companies and wealth builders. The most successful wealth creators of recent decades have masterfully applied network effects and scale thinking. Their approaches offer valuable lessons regardless of your financial starting point. Build platforms, not just products. Technology giants like Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft evolved from product companies to platform companies, creating ecosystems where others build and sell, with the platform capturing value from every transaction. This transformation enabled exponentially greater scale than product-focused approaches alone. This principle applies beyond technology. Financial advisors who create educational platforms rather than just serving clients individually, real estate investors who develop systems other investors can leverage, and professionals who build communities around their expertise all benefit from platform thinking. Leverage accumulated advantage. Network effects often create winner-take-most dynamics, where early advantages compound over time. Successful wealth builders identify areas where accumulated advantage operates and position accordingly. In personal finance, this might mean specializing deeply in growing fields where expertise compounds, building professional reputations in emerging domains before competition intensifies, or developing proprietary systems that improve with each application. Designed for increasing returns. Traditional economies of scale focus on reducing costs as volume increases. Modern scale thinking extends this concept to designing systems where value increases with each additional user, transaction, or data point. David applied this concept to his consulting practice by developing a proprietary assessment tool for clients. Each client engagement improved the algorithm, making the tool more valuable for subsequent clients. This increasing returns dynamic allowed him to charge premium rates while delivering superior value, creating a virtuous cycle of growth. Focus on transaction efficiency. Many breakthrough companies fundamentally reduced transaction costs or friction in existing markets. PayPal made payments simpler, Airbnb reduced friction in short-term property rental, and Amazon streamlined retail purchasing. In personal financial strategies, focusing on reducing transaction costs and friction similarly creates advantage. This might involve optimizing tax efficiency, minimizing investment expenses, or streamlining financial operations to reduce the cognitive overhead of managing wealth. Embrace technological leverage. Technology provides unprecedented leverage for individuals to scale their impact, income, and investment returns. Those who embrace these tools early often capture disproportionate benefits. Lisa, a financial educator, initially reached a few dozen clients annually through in-person workshops. By developing online courses, she now reaches thousands while investing her time in improving content rather than delivering it repeatedly. This technological leverage transformed both her impact and income. Implementing network and scale thinking. To apply these mental models effectively in your financial life. Audit your activities for scale potential. Identify which of your skills, assets, and activities could deliver increasing returns with growth. Invest disproportionately in high network value relationships. Not all connections offer equal potential. Prioritize relationships that combine trustworthiness with network centrality. Design systems, not just actions. Whether in career development, investing, or business building, focus on creating systems that improve and appreciate with use rather than one-time efforts. Position within growing networks. Identify and participate in networks with positive growth trajectories, whether in professional fields, investment categories, or knowledge communities. Apply lens of increasing returns. When evaluating opportunities, explicitly consider whether benefits will increase or decrease with scale and time. The compounding advantage of these mental models makes them particularly powerful over long time horizons. While traditional financial strategies might improve your position incrementally, network effects and scale thinking offer pathways to exponential improvement, where each advance creates the foundation for even greater subsequent advances. Chapter 13: The Power Law and the 80-20 Rule. In the late 19th century, Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto observed that roughly 80% of Italy's land was owned by 20% of the population. As he examined wealth distribution in other countries, he found similar patterns. This discovery evolved into what we now call the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, a power law relationship suggesting that roughly 80% of effects come from 20% of causes. Pareto, 1896-1771. This principle isn't limited to wealth distribution. It appears consistently across domains. 20% of customers typically generate 80% of revenue. 20% of software bugs cause 80% of crashes. 20% of drivers cause 80% of crashes. 80% of accidents. Once you understand this mental model, you begin seeing it everywhere, especially in your financial life. How 20% of efforts create 80% of results. The 80-20 rule represents a specific instance of power law distributions, mathematical relationships where small causes produce disproportionately large effects. Understanding these relationships transforms how you approach financial decisions. In personal finance, power laws appear in multiple dimensions. Investment returns. Within most investment portfolios, a small percentage of positions generate the majority of returns. A study of the U.S. stock market from 1926 to 2015 found that just 4% of stocks accounted for the entire market's net gains. The remaining 96% collectively matched Treasury bill returns. Basembinder, 2018. This pattern extends to venture capital, where typically 10 to 20% of investments in a portfolio generate 80 to 90% of returns. Even for individual investors, outsized returns often come from a small subset of their investment decisions. Horsley, 2018. Michael, an experienced investor, discovered that just 3 investments, representing 15% of his total investment decisions, had generated 76% of his lifetime investment gains. This realization fundamentally changed his approach to portfolio construction, leading him to concentrate more capital on his highest conviction opportunities while still maintaining diversification. Career value. In most careers, a small percentage of activities, relationships, decisions, and skills drive the vast majority of financial value. A sales professional might generate 80% of their commission from 20% of their clients. A programmer might create 80% of their career value through mastery of a few specific technologies rather than broad familiarity with many. Sarah, a marketing consultant, discovered that 75% of her income came from just 22% of her clients. These high-value clients shared specific characteristics. They operated in growth industries, had clear decision-making structures, and valued data-driven approaches. This insight allowed her to refocus her client acquisition efforts on prospects matching this profile, substantially increasing her income while reducing her workload. Identifying high-impact financial activities. The practical value of understanding power laws comes from identifying which specific activities, decisions, and focus areas fall into the high-impact 20% for your financial life. High-impact income activities. Certain activities create substantially more financial value than others. Skill selection and development. Technical skills in high-demand fields, specialized knowledge in growing sectors, and capabilities that influence large financial decisions typically offer superior returns on learning investment. Thomas identified data analysis as a high-leverage skill in his industry. By investing 150 hours in developing advanced analytics capabilities, he qualified for positions offering $30,000 higher annual compensation, an exceptional return that would compound throughout his career. Strategic career moves. Significant compensation increases typically come from position changes rather than incremental advancement within roles. Strategically timed job changes often deliver more lifetime income than years of consistent performance within a single organization. Negotiation moments. Salary negotiations during hiring and promotion represent extremely high leverage activities. A successful initial negotiation that increases compensation by $10,000 potentially creates hundreds of thousands in lifetime earnings, as subsequent raises often build on this higher base. High-impact wealth-building activities. Certain financial decisions create disproportionate wealth impacts. Savings rate optimization. Increasing your savings rate from 10% to 20% has more implications for lifetime wealth than virtually any investment strategy improvement. Despite its greater influence on financial outcomes, this fundamental variable often receives less attention than investment selection. Tax efficiency. Strategic tax planning, particularly around investment accounts, retirement contributions, and major life decisions, can preserve more wealth than years of incremental savings efforts. The difference between tax-efficient and tax-inefficient investment approaches often exceeds 1 to 2% annually, compounding dramatically over decades. Major purchase optimization. Decisions about housing, vehicles, and education typically impact financial trajectories more than hundreds of minor purchase decisions combined. Keeping housing costs 10 to 15% below conventional affordability guidelines often creates more financial opportunity than countless small economies in discretionary spending. High-impact investment activities. Within investment management, certain activities deliver significantly more value. Asset allocation. Research consistently indicates that asset allocation, how you divide investments across stocks, bonds, real estate, and other categories, determines far more of your return variability than specific investment selection. Fee minimization. Reducing investment management fees by even 0.5% annually compounds substantial wealth differences over decades. This high leverage activity requires minimal time investment, yet provides guaranteed returns regardless of market performance. Behavioral discipline. Maintaining investment discipline during market extremes, avoiding both panic selling during downturns and excessive risk-taking during bull markets, typically impacts long-term returns more than security selection or timing decisions. Investing in asymmetric opportunities. Power laws create another crucial insight. In many domains, returns come not from consistent moderate outcomes, but from extreme outliers, rare events or opportunities with extraordinarily high payoffs. This suggests deliberately seeking asymmetric opportunities where potential gains significantly outweigh potential losses. The barbell strategy. Popularized by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, the barbell strategy involves concentrating investments in extremely safe assets, the left side, and a small allocation to high-risk, high-reward opportunities, the right side, while avoiding middle-ground investments. Taleb, 2012. This approach acknowledges power law distributions by creating a portfolio where most capital remains protected while maintaining exposure to potentially outsized returns. The strategy accepts frequent small losses within the high-risk portion as the cost of occasional extraordinary gains. Optionality cultivation. Another approach involves deliberately creating or acquiring options, situations where you have the right but not the obligation to take future action. These asymmetric structures limit the downside while preserving unlimited upside. Examples include skill development in emerging fields, small investments in early-stage companies, relationship building with high-impact individuals, and geographic flexibility. Positive black swan exposure. Taleb also emphasizes structuring your financial life to benefit from positive black swans, unexpected high-impact events. This approach focuses less on prediction and more on positioning to benefit when such events occur. Practical applications include maintaining liquid reserves to capitalize on market dislocations, developing rare valuable skills, building diverse networks, and positioning in sectors with embedded optionality. The most successful financial strategies don't treat all activities, decisions, or investments as equally important. They acknowledge the fundamental asymmetry revealed by power laws, Systematically concentrating resources where impact is highest while maintaining sufficient diversification to manage risk. Chapter 14. Mental Models for Financial Freedom. Financial freedom represents more than wealth accumulation. It's about creating a life where money serves your deepest values, rather than constraining your choices. This chapter explores how mental models can help design a life of financial independence, breaking the traditional link between time and money. Designing a life of financial independence. Financial independence occurs when your passive income exceeds your expenses, allowing work to become optional rather than mandatory. This state creates extraordinary freedom. The ability to allocate your time based on meaning and purpose, rather than financial necessity. The journey toward this freedom begins with a fundamental mental shift, viewing financial independence as a design challenge rather than simply a savings target. This perspective change focuses attention on three interconnected elements. 1. The independence equation. At its core, financial independence occurs when passive income greater than expenses. This simple equation reveals multiple paths to freedom: increasing passive income, reducing expenses, doing both simultaneously. Most traditional financial advice focuses predominantly on the income side of this equation, accumulating enough assets to generate sufficient passive income. While important, this one-dimensional approach often leads to unnecessarily long timelines and excessive focus on asset accumulation. Rebecca and David approached financial independence differently. Rather than focusing solely on building a conventional retirement portfolio, they designed a multifaceted strategy: developing rental property income, creating digital products generating passive revenue, optimizing their spending patterns, and relocating to a lower-cost region with a better quality of life. This integrated approach reduced their freedom number while accelerating their timeline. 2. The capital allocation framework. Not all investments contribute equally to financial independence. The most effective capital allocation framework categorizes investments based on how directly they advance freedom. Freedom-accelerating assets generate current income that directly reduces dependence on active work. Rental properties, dividend-producing investments, royalty-generating intellectual property. Freedom-supporting assets don't produce current income, but appreciate over time, potentially converting to income-generating assets later. Growth stocks, appreciating real estate, businesses with reinvested profits. Freedom-neutral assets neither generate income nor reliably appreciate but serve other purposes: personal residence, vehicles, collectibles. Matthew reviewed his investment portfolio through this framework and realized that despite his substantial net worth, only 30% of his assets were directly advancing his freedom. This insight led him to gradually reallocate capital toward investments generating current income, substantially increasing his passive income without requiring additional savings. 3. The timeline design model. Financial independence represents a spectrum rather than a binary state. Understanding this continuum allows for designing more nuanced freedom timelines. Baseline independence covers essential expenses only, providing basic security but limited lifestyle flexibility. Current lifestyle independence supports your existing spending patterns, allowing life to continue unchanged without active income. Aspirational independence funds your ideal lifestyle, potentially including enhanced travel, philanthropy, or other meaningful priorities. Jennifer mapped her independence journey across these stages, calculating that baseline independence, covering essential housing, food, healthcare, and transportation costs, required approximately 40% of her full independence number. This insight allowed her to design a staged freedom approach, reducing work obligations as she crossed each threshold, rather than waiting for complete independence. The FIRE framework. The FIRE movement has popularized accelerated paths to financial independence by combining aggressive savings rates with optimized investment approaches. While individual strategies vary widely, the core FIRE framework incorporates several powerful mental models. The savings rate accelerator. The most impactful FIRE principle involves maximizing savings rate. the percentage of income directed toward investments. While conventional financial planning often recommends 10 to 15% savings rates, FIRE practitioners frequently achieve 40 to 70% by optimizing both income and expenses. This elevated savings rate dramatically compresses the timeline to independence. At a 15% savings rate, financial independence typically requires 35 to 40 working years. At a 50% savings rate, this timeline often shrinks to 15 to 20 years. At 70%, many reach independence in under 10 years. The mathematical advantage comes from the dual impact of high savings rates. They simultaneously build assets faster while demonstrating the ability to live well on less, reducing the total assets needed for independence. The 4% rule evolution. The 4% rule, the principle that a diversified portfolio can sustainably support annual withdrawals of 4% of the initial balance, adjusted for inflation, has become a cornerstone of independence planning. This rule suggests that achieving independence requires approximately 25 times your annual expenses in invested assets. Bengen, 1994. While this rule provides a useful baseline, sophisticated FIRE practitioners have evolved beyond this simplified model, incorporating variable withdrawal strategies that adjust spending based on market performance, increasing sustainability, income-producing asset integration that reduces dependence on portfolio withdrawals, semi-retirement approaches where modest active income supplements investment returns, dramatically enhancing portfolio sustainability. Robin and Dominguez, 2008. The cost-happiness optimization. Perhaps FIRE's most valuable contribution is the deliberate examination of which expenses genuinely contribute to well-being, optimizing for happiness rather than simply reducing costs. This approach involves critically evaluating each spending category based on its true contribution to life satisfaction, and then designing a lifestyle that maximizes happiness per dollar. This thoughtful consumption often leads to surprising insights. Some expensive categories add minimal happiness and can be eliminated, while other expenditures create substantial well-being and warrant preservation or expansion, creating passive income streams. The journey to financial independence accelerates dramatically when you develop passive or semi-passive income sources beyond traditional investment returns. Several mental models guide this process. The income spectrum framework. Income sources exist on a spectrum from completely active, trading time directly for money, to fully passive, requiring no ongoing time investment. Understanding this spectrum helps identify stepping stone opportunities to gradually shift from active to passive income. Semi-passive income requires initial time investment, followed by minimal ongoing maintenance. Examples include rental properties, online courses, royalty-generating content, or established websites with advertising revenue. Portfolio income derives from assets that require minimal management beyond periodic rebalancing and oversight. Examples include dividend-producing stocks, bonds, REITs, or business investments where others handle operations. The leverage maximizer. Creating substantial passive income typically involves leveraging one or more resources. Financial leverage uses borrowed capital to control larger assets, potentially generating returns exceeding financing costs. Real estate with positive cash flow. Knowledge leverage creates value once but sells it repeatedly. Books, courses, software. Technological leverage uses systems and automation to scale impact beyond personal time constraints. Online platforms, algorithmic trading systems. People leverage involves others implementing your systems and knowledge, generating income beyond your direct time investment. Businesses with competent management. Thomas combined multiple leverage forms in his independence journey. He built a specialized consulting business, incorporating his expertise into repeatable systems, knowledge leverage, gradually hired and trained others to deliver these services, people leverage, and invested the resulting profits into dividend-producing investments, financial leverage. This integrated approach generated multiple income streams with decreasing time requirements. The most successful financial independence journeys typically combine traditional investment approaches with the deliberate creation of passive income streams, each reinforcing the other to accelerate freedom. By applying these mental models to your independent strategy, you can design a life where financial constraints no longer dictate your choices. Your time allocation reflects your values, and money serves as a tool for meaning and purpose rather than a goal unto itself. Chapter 15. Thinking in Generations. In 1790, Benjamin Franklin's will established a fascinating experiment. He left 1,000 pounds each to Boston and Philadelphia with specific instructions. The money would be loaned to young apprentices at 5% interest for 200 years. Franklin, 1790/2008. By 1990, Franklin's initial 2,000 pounds, about $8,000 today, had grown to over $6.5 million, demonstrating the extraordinary power of truly long-term thinking. While few of us will establish 200-year financial plans, Franklin's experiment illuminates a profound mental model. Thinking in generations, rather than merely years or decades. Long-term wealth strategies. Most financial planning operates within relatively short time frames: retirement preparation, college funding, or near-term goals. Generational thinking extends this horizon dramatically, considering how wealth might grow, be preserved, and create value across multiple lifetimes. Compound growth maximization. When your time horizon extends beyond your lifetime, the power of compounding reaches extraordinary levels. At 7% annual growth, $10,000 becomes approximately $76,000 over 30 years, but extends to $1,500,000 over 100 years. This extended compounding creates several strategic implications. Growth emphasis over income production. While income-generating investments make sense for personal needs, multi-generational wealth benefits from emphasizing long-term growth, particularly in tax-advantaged structures. Reinvestment discipline. The greatest threat to multi-generational wealth is consumption that interrupts compounding. Families that maintain strict reinvestment disciplines, automatically directing a significant percentage of returns back into principal, typically sustain wealth across generations more successfully. Tax structure optimization. Taxation represents one of the most significant drags on long-term compounding. Multi-generational strategies therefore place a premium value on tax efficiency. Transfer tax minimization through systematic lifetime gifting, philanthropy structures, insurance solutions, and entity creation. Compounding shelter structures like Roth IRAs, specially designed life insurance, dynasty trusts, and family investment companies allow tax-free or tax-deferred growth. Basis management through strategic harvesting of losses, timing of recognition events, and charitable strategies. Institutional investment approaches. The most successful multi-generational wealth strategies adopt principles from institutional investors, diversification across dimensions, including geographic diversification, strategy diversification, and manager diversification. Private investment integration that offers premium returns for reduced liquidity is a worthwhile trade-off when the time horizon spans generations. Value alignment focus, where investments aligned with family principles receive better oversight and more patient capital. Building financial legacies. True financial legacies extend beyond monetary assets to encompass values, knowledge, opportunities, and structures that support family flourishing across generations. Vision beyond money. Families whose wealth survives multiple generations typically develop a clear purpose beyond preservation of financial assets. This shared vision, whether focused on business creation, philanthropy, community development, or other meaningful pursuits, provides essential cohesion and direction. Governance structures. As families expand across generations, informal decision-making becomes increasingly challenging. Successful multi-generational families develop explicit governance approaches. Family councils bring together members from different branches and generations to discuss values and establish policies. Investment committees oversee family assets with clearly defined responsibilities. Distribution frameworks create transparent approaches to supporting family members and philanthropic interests. Conflict resolution mechanisms provide structured approaches for addressing inevitable disagreements. Financial education systems. Knowledge transfer between generations often determines whether wealth becomes an opportunity or a burden. Effective families create systematic approaches to financial education. Age-appropriate learning paths introduce concepts progressively. Experiential opportunities provide practical experience through modest investment responsibilities, philanthropic involvement, or business participation. External resources complement family knowledge through advisors, educational programs, and peer learning communities, teaching the next generation smart money habits. Perhaps the most valuable legacy is financial literacy and wisdom that empowers future generations to make sound decisions regardless of inherited wealth. Developmental alignment. Financial education proves most effective when matched to development stages. Young children, ages 3 to 7, can grasp concrete concepts like saving and delayed gratification through allowance systems and savings jars. Older children, ages 8 to 12, develop a capacity for budgeting, distinguishing needs from wants, and basic investment concepts through bank accounts and modest investment experiences. Teenagers, ages 13 to 18, can understand compound growth, debt management, and long-term planning through progressive responsibility and involvement in family financial discussions. Young adults, 18 plus, benefit from practical experience with budgeting, credit management, and financial independence. Values-based financial teaching. Effective financial education connects money management to deeper values rather than focusing solely on technical skills. This helps the next generation view wealth as a tool for living according to principles rather than as an end itself. Conversations about financial decisions provide opportunities to discuss values like gratitude and abundance versus scarcity mindsets, generosity and its relationship to personal fulfillment, balance between present enjoyment and future security, work as a contribution rather than merely income generation. Experiential learning priorities. Financial wisdom develops primarily through experience rather than abstract instruction. The most effective approaches create structured opportunities to practice key skills. Making meaningful choices with limited resources and experiencing both benefits and consequences within a supportive environment. Managing progressively larger responsibilities from small allowances to substantial education expenses. Participating in family financial processes appropriate to age and readiness. Entrepreneurial experiences that connect effort to income generation. Productive relationship with wealth. Perhaps the most challenging is helping the next generation develop a healthy relationship with wealth, seeing it as a tool for opportunity rather than a source of identity or entitlement. Successful families typically maintain reasonable lifestyle boundaries, demonstrating values-based consumption rather than status-driven spending. Emphasize capability development over financial provision, investing in education and experiences that develop skills. Create clear expectations about financial support and inheritance to encourage personal responsibility. Model healthy money behaviors consistently, recognizing that observed patterns influence more powerfully than explicit instruction. The most successful wealth transitions occur when financial assets, family values, and individual capability development progress in harmony. By thinking in generations, you create a legacy that transcends financial metrics, contributing to family flourishing and meaningful impact long after your lifetime. Conclusion. Throughout this book, we've explored powerful mental models that transform how we think about money, wealth, and financial decisions. From the extraordinary power of compounding to the protective value of inversion thinking, from the clarity of understanding opportunity cost to the precision of calibrating risk and reward, these mental models collectively form an operating system for financial success. However, these models are not simply theoretical constructs. They represent practical tools that have created real wealth for those who apply them consistently. The most successful investors and wealth builders in history, from Warren Buffett to Charlie Munger, from Ray Dalio to Howard Marks, have used these very frameworks to achieve extraordinary results. Their success wasn't magic or unrepeatable luck, but the disciplined application of superior thinking tools. What makes these mental models so powerful is their versatility and timelessness. They work across different economic environments, investment categories, and personal circumstances. Whether navigating a bull market or recession, whether starting with modest savings or substantial wealth, whether in your 20s or your 60s, these principles provide reliable guidance for making better financial decisions. The true measure of these models' worth comes not from short-term results, but from their compounding impact over decades. Each marginally better decision, each avoided mistake, and each optimized strategy compounds over time. A 1 to 2% improvement in annual returns might seem minor in any given year, but transforms your financial trajectory over a lifetime. As you move forward on your financial journey, consider these models as a toolkit rather than a rigid formula. Different situations will call for different tools. Sometimes the 80-20 rule will provide the clearest insight. Other times, inversion thinking or opportunity cost analysis will illuminate the best path forward. The art of financial wisdom lies in knowing which model to apply in which circumstance, a skill that develops with practice and experience. Remember, too, that these mental models don't exist in isolation. They form an interconnected system where each reinforces and enhances the others. Compounding works best when protected by appropriate margins of safety. Probabilistic thinking becomes most powerful when combined with second-order analysis. The circle of competence guides where to apply asymmetric risk-reward assessments. As you implement these mental models, remember that consistency matters more than perfection. You won't apply every model perfectly in every situation, and occasional mistakes are inevitable. What matters is incorporating these frameworks into your regular financial thinking, gradually replacing reactive, emotion-driven decisions with more deliberate, principle-based choices. Perhaps most importantly, these mental models liberate you from the anxiety and confusion that often accompany financial decisions. By providing structured ways to think about complex problems, they create confidence and clarity, allowing you to make sound decisions even in uncertain environments. The ultimate goal isn't simply accumulating money, but building true financial freedom. The ability to make life choices based on what brings meaning and fulfillment, rather than financial necessity. These mental models are the tools that make that freedom possible, transforming money from a source of stress into a vehicle for creating the life you truly want.
The last word. As we close this journey into mental models for financial success, remember, freedom isn't built in a day. It's forged in the small decisions, sharpened by clarity of thought, and sustained by consistent action. You now hold a framework built on critical thinking, strategy, and purpose. Use it not just to grow your wealth, but to design a life of autonomy, meaning, and impact. Financial freedom isn't just a destination. It's a discipline, and it begins with how you think. Thank you for listening, and may your mind remain your most powerful asset. This has been Mental Models for Financial Success. Create Financial Freedom. Another in a series of critical thinking secrets books. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved. For a copy of the ebook and other critical thinking tools, visit our website, www.criticalthinkingsecrets.com.
References: Adini, P., 2012, April 6th. The Shockingly Simple Math Behind Early Retirement. Mr. Money Mustache. https www.monomoneymustache.com 2012 01-13. The Shockingly Simple Math Behind Early Retirement. Anthony, S.D., 2016, July 15th. Kodak's downfall wasn't about technology. Harvard Business Review. https hbr.org 2016. What if Kodak's downfall wasn't about technology? Ariely D. 2008. Predictably Irrational: The Hidden Forces That Shape Our Decisions. HarperCollins, Barber, B.M., and Odeon, T. 2000. Trading is hazardous to your wealth. The Common Stock Investment Performance of Individual Investors. The Journal of Finance 55 to 773 to 806. https doi.org 10.111/002 2-00226. Barber, B.M. and Odian, T. 2013. The Behavior of Individual Investors. In G.M. Constantinides, M. Harris, and R.M. Stoltz, eds. Handbook of the Economics of Finance, Volume 2, pages 1533-1570, Elsevier. Bastiat, F. 1995. Selected Essays on Political Economy, S. Kane, Trons. Foundation for Economic Education. Original work published 1848. Benjen, W.P., 1994. Determining Withdrawal Rates Using Historical Data. Journal of Financial Planning 74, 171 to 180. Bessembinder, H. 2018. Do stocks outperform Treasury bills? Journal of Financial Economics 129, 3, 440 to 457. https doi.org 10.16/jjfineco.2018.06.004. Bezos, J. 2021. 2020 Letter to Shareholders, Amazon. https www.amazon.com. News Company. News 2020 Letter to Shareholders. Bierman, H. and Smith, S. 2012. The Capital Budgeting Decision, Economic Analysis of Investment Projects, 9th edition. Routledge. Boyle, J.C., 2007. The Little Book of Common Sense Investing, the only way to guarantee your fair share of stock market returns. Wiley, Branson, R. 2011. Losing My Virginity, How I Survived, Had Fun, and Made a Fortune Doing Business My Way. Updated edition. Crown Business, Buffett, W. 1984. The Super Investors of Graham and Doddsville. Columbia Business School. Buffett, W. 1996. Berkshire Hathaway, Annual Shareholder Letter. Berkshire Hathaway, Inc., https www.berkshirehathaway.com, letters, 1996.html. Buffett, W. 2019. Berkshire Hathaway Annual Shareholder Letter. Berkshire Hathaway, Inc., https www.berkshirehathaway.com, letters, not 2019, LTR.pdf. Buffett, W. E. and Cunningham, L.A., 2019. The Essays of Warren Buffett, Lessons for Corporate America, 5th edition. Carolina Academic Press. Calipris, A. ed. 2011. The Ultimate Quotable Einstein. Princeton University Press. Carlson, M. 2007. A Brief History of the 1987 Stock Market Crash with a Discussion of the Federal Reserve Response. Finance and Economics Discussion Series, Divisions of Research and Statistics and Monetary Affairs, Federal Reserve Board. Dalio, R. 2017. Principles, Life and Work. Simon & Schuster, Dalbar Incorporated, 2021. Quantitative Analysis of Investor Behavior. Dalbar Incorporated. David, F.N., 1962. Games, Gods, and Gambling, A History of Probability and Statistical Ideas. Dover Publications, Ellis, C.D., 2013. Winning the Loser's Game, Timeless Strategies for Successful Investing, 6th edition. McGraw-Hill, Franklin, B., 1790. Last Will and Testament of Benjamin Franklin. Historical document, https://constitution.org/1-history/primary sources/lastwill.html. Gleich, J., 1992. Genius, The Life and Science of Richard Feynman. Pantheon Books, Graham, B., 2006. The Intelligent Investor, The Definitive Book on Value Investing, Revised Edition. Harper Business, original work published 1949. Horsley, S., 2018, June 28th. The 1-10-80 Rule, How 1% of VC-backed startups generate 80% of returns. Correlation Ventures, https jas correlationventures.com. The slide at 1 to 10 AT rule how 1 of VC backed. Startups generate 80 of returns githris. Kahneman D. 2011. Thinking Fast and Slow. Farrar, Strauss, and Giroux. Kahneman D. and Tversky A. 1979. Prospect Theory, an analysis of decision under risk. Econometrica 472-263-291. https jasdoi.org 10.23 0719141185. Carlson N. Lowenstein G. and Seppi D. 2009. The Ostrich Effect, Selective Attention to Information. Journal of Risk and Uncertainty 38-2 95-115. tipajasdoi.org 10.007 AES 11166. -09060-6. Kaufman, P.J. 2005. Poor Charlie's Almanac, The Wit and Wisdom of Charles T. Munger. PCA Publications. Kierkegaard S. 1987. Either Or, Part 2. H. V. Hong and E. H. Hong Hart Trans. Princeton University Press. Original work published 1843. Kuhnen, C. M. and Knudsen, B. 2005. The Neural Basis of Financial Risk-Taking. Neuron 475-763-770. https jasdoi.org 10.10. 16/jneuron.2005.0808. Lowenstein, R. 2000. When Genius Failed, The Rise and Fall of Long-Term Capital Management. Random House. Lynch, P. 1989. One Up on Wall Street. How to Use What You Already Know to Make Money in the Market. Simon & Schuster. Madrian, B.C., and Shea, D.F., 2001. The Power of Suggestion. Inertia in 401k Participation and Savings Behavior. The Quarterly Journal of Economics 116. 4-1149-1187. https doi.org 1016 2/00 33551753265543. Marx, H. 2011. The Most Important Thing, Uncommon Sense for the Thoughtful Investor. Columbia University Press. Marx, H. 2018. Mastering the Market Cycle. Getting the Odds on Your Side. Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. Metcalf, B. 2013. Metcalf's Law After 40 Years of Ethernet. Computer 4612, 26-31. https dy.org 10.109/MC.2013.374. Munger, C.T., 1994, April 14th. A Lesson on Elementary Worldly Wisdom as it Relates to Investment Management and Business, speech transcript. USC Business School. https://fs.blog/great-talk/a lesson on worldly wisdom/. Munger, C.T., 1995. The Psychology of Human Misjudgment, speech transcript. Harvard University. https://jamesclear.com, Great Speeches, Psychology of Human Misjudgment, by Charlie Munger. Munger, C.T., 2003. Academic Economics, Strengths and Weaknesses, speech transcript. Herb K. Undergraduate Lecture, University of California, Santa Barbara Economics Department. Munger, C.T., 2005. The Art of Stockpicking, speech transcript. https www.grahamandsville.net. WordPress, Files, Gurus, Charlie %, 20 Munger, Charlie %20 Munger %20 %20 RE %20 R %20 Stocker and 20 Picking.pdf. Pareto V. Nitin Sutyan. Manual of Political Economy. A.S. Schwier, trans. Augustus M. Kelly. Original work published 1906. Pinson, H. 2020. The Psychology of Money. Timeless Lessons on Wealth, Greed, and Happiness. Harriman House. Polya G. 2004. How to Solve It. A New Aspect of Mathematical Method. Princeton University Press. Original work published 1945. Robin V. and Dominguez, J., 2008. Your Money or Your Life, 9 Steps to Transforming Your Relationship with Money and Achieving Financial Independence. Penguin Books, Schroeder, A., 2008. The Snowball, Warren Buffett and the Business of Life. Bantam Books, Sheffrin, H. and Statman, M., 1985. The Disposition to Sell Winners Too Early and Ride Losers Too Long. Theory and Evidence. The Journal of Finance, 43, 777-790. HTTPS as Samosai Barhain of Komaikas Dar by 10.111, J.154, 0626 1.1985. TB05002. X. Siegel, J.J. 2014. Stocks for the Long Run, The Definitive Guide to Financial Market Returns and Long-Term Investment Strategies, 5th edition. McGraw-Hill, Stone, B., 2013. The Everything Store, Jeff Bezos and the Age of Amazon. Little Brown and Company, Taleb, N.N., 2007. The Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable Random House. Taleb, N.N., 2012. Anti-Fragile, Things That Gain from Disorder. Random House. Thaler, R.H., 1990. Anomalies, The Endowment Effect, Loss Aversion, and Status Quo Bias. Journal of Economic Perspectives, 51193-206. https://doi.org 10.1257/JEP.5.1.193. Thaler, R.H., 2015. Misbehaving, The Making of Behavioral Economics. W. W. Norton and Company. Thaler, R.H. and Sunstein, C.R., 2008. Nudge, Improving Decisions About Health, Wealth, and Happiness. Yale University Press. Thiel P., 2014. 0 to 1. Notes on Startups or How to Build the Future. Crown Business. Tversky, A. and Kahneman, D., 1973. Availability, A Heuristic for Judging Frequency and Probability. Cognitive Psychology, 5.2, 207-232. https shakrostide.doi.org 10.16/00. 102, 85 open parenthesis, 73 close parenthesis, 900033 open parenthesis, 9 close parenthesis. Walton, J., 2014, January 20th. Sarah Blakely, founder and CEO of Spanx, The Huffington Post. https www.huffpost.com entry Sarah, Blakely founder and B for Fox 4x4. Weber, EU and HCC, 1998. Cross-cultural differences in risk perception, but cross-cultural similarities in attitudes towards perceived risk. Management Science, 44.9, 1205-1217. https geodui.org.10.1287/MNSC.44.9.1205.